across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 6. Happy Saturday, one and all. Mark Dolan, Talk Breakfast. A big show for you this morning, and breaking as we come on air, the special relationship in ruins as a furious Donald Trump blasts Sir Keir Starmer for Britain's very late response as the PM finally allows America to use British bases to strike Iran. Meanwhile, Labour's immigration betrayal as the left wing of the party, led by the ginger growler herself, Angela Rayner, seek yet another U-turn to give 3 million Boris Wave immigrants indefinite leave to remain. Now, this is a move that could cost the country £250 billion. It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch. And do you know something? It might get me cancelled. Today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. It might get me cancelled. Good. Nothing in the studio to throw around. 1 second. Listen. It's the Boris Wave. It's £250 billion, right? It's a cost to children in this country that haven't even been born yet. Today's Dolan's Dispatch might get me cancelled. Good. That's at 9 a.m. Also this morning, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Do you remember him? He's still calling himself His Royal Highness. And yet another public display from the British Muslim community as 30,000 worshippers participate in a mass outdoor prayer in Birmingham. Is public Muslim prayer a threat to British culture? I'm in trouble. I've just broken the camera. Because I did this. And also, why the deafening silence from the Church of England about this public worship, given that we're supposed to be a Christian country? We'll be speaking to a top cleric, a man of the cloth, who is not happy. Meanwhile, the Home Office tried to block Prince Harry's request for expensive taxpayer-funded security. And what about this story? I love this story. Dean Spencer, by the way, executive producer of the show, is back. He's had to come back to get the numbers up. He's had to come back. It's an unbelievable story. You'll love this story. It made me chuckle. A woke council is offering its staff counselling because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. They're going to get therapy because Farage is on his way. What's going to happen when he becomes Prime Minister? They're just going to have a meltdown, aren't they? I'm not making it up. A woke council offering its staff counselling because the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, is coming to their town. You couldn't make it up. So much to get through. Now, my priority is to get your opinions on the radio and the telly. When we have our morning meeting, all we care about is what matters to our audience. That's why we're here. That is the purpose. Sort out that camera. Davis, was he out last night? Now, I'm delighted to say that our television output is now live on YouTube, and record numbers of people are watching Talk Breakfast. And if you're curious, especially at the weekend, you've got more time, switch on your computer or your smartphone, you get YouTube up, and you search Talk, and hit the live button, and up we pop. It's a TV show. You get to see all of my amazing guests. You'll get to watch Dolan's Dispatch, which today might get me cancelled. Can you fix that camera, please? There you go. Folks, the other thing I want to say is that Your calls are my priority. Calls and voice notes. We know you're busy at the weekend, so if a voice note works, that's good. All you got to do is you call 0344 499 1000. And I think, am I right, Sholape, that you get like a kind of, you can leave a voice note. That's how you do it. You call the number and there's a beep, something like that. Or speak to us live on the show. The brilliant Sholape is taking your calls. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Well, look, I'm excited about today's show. I've got so many great guests. The brilliant Duncan Barks is coming into the studio very shortly, who's a regular talk presenter and a legend of this medium. Let me bring you the front pages. So much to go out today, folks. Daily Express, first of all. As peers still delay assisted dying legislation, determined campaigners say eventually we will win the right to die battle. So the assisted dying battle will not end, even if peers succeed in blocking the bill. According to campaigners, they vowed to bring back the fight in the next parliamentary session if the clock is run down. And I've got to tell you that I haven't really made my mind up about assisted dying. I think in principle I'm against it because I think it would be abused by the health service, who are always trying to make their lives easier. I don't know about you, but I'm a veteran of many relatives and friends having gone into hospital and been pumped with drugs and they never got out. There are many people that I know that consider a visit to an NHS hospital to be a death sentence, especially if you're older, especially if you've got dementia or some other chronic condition. You're treated by the NHS like an inconvenience. And honestly, you know that idea of euthanasia, the idea that you kind of opt to say goodbye. And, you know, obviously it's the medics that will, you know, vets do it, don't they? You got the Labrador and he's had an accident and it's better to put him out of his misery. Well, I can assure you, folks, at 6:10 in the morning, that that's what the NHS do already. The NHS, they do decide that it's time for people to go. They already do. We have assisted dying, we have euthanasia, and it's often not the patient that's chosen it. I've seen it so many times, especially dementia patients and elderly people with chronic conditions. And what the medics do, they pump them full of sedatives and drugs and then they pass. And they're always worse off than when they went into the hospital in the first place. So we have it. I honestly think unscrupulous medics are already doing it, and it's so subtle, just up the dosage of this painkiller and that painkiller, and then they're gone. So in many ways, this is an academic discussion. But as regards, if you're somebody that has a very, very serious illness, there's going to be a lot of pain, you're going to be a great, you know, sort of strain on the family, I can understand the attraction of that. On the other hand, I don't trust the authorities with the right to end our lives. So I'm very torn. Maybe you could help me with this. Can you help me with my assisted dying dilemma? Because I'm just not sure. Daily Mirror, loss of a working class hero. My Ricky's last hug almost broke my ribs. Inquest hears of mum's final moment with boxing legend before he died. Ricky Hatton, what a character. What a great athlete he was. A legend of boxing. A very self-destructive man. What he used to do is get incredibly fit for his fights, didn't he? And he was a real champion, very brave in the ring. And then once he'd won the fight, he would hit the Guinness for about 3 months. Not dissimilar to the executive producer of this show, Dean Spencer, when he's not on Talk Breakfast. What's happened? He's been away. He's had to come back to get the numbers up. He's had to come back. But when he's not here, can I tell you, I'm going to be super honest with you, folks, he gets out of shape. Because this is, as you know, Talk Breakfast. It's one of the elite media products of the United Kingdom. It's elite level Talk Breakfast with an amazing engineer. Today, the excellent, fabulous Liam. And we've got Davis, Luke, well done. They all look the same to me. I actually don't care. Was it? Just call him Tech Op. Tech Op. Can you just call him Man A? That would do it. Lovely, Luke. Folks, well, we're elite level. And Dean, when he's not here, it drops a little bit. So he's back. He's back, and he's fighting. But anyway, Ricky Hatton, a real legend. Very sad that he passed at a terribly young age. He was just 46 when he was found to have passed. And now an inquiry has suggested that there's no evidence that he tried to take his life, and that he may well have just passed as a result of a tragic medical incident. But it looks like Ricky Hatton did not seek to take his own life. Either way, may God bless his soul and may God rest his soul. Sun newspaper, exclusive, Crown cash-in storm. Duke raked in 130 grand a year subletting royal stable block. The headline, Prince Edward. This is a member of the royal family we don't talk about very much. It's Prince Edward. And it's Edward and Sophie raked in up to 130 grand a year subletting converted stables on a £30 million estate where they pay only a peppercorn rent. Stables next to the 120-room main house, leased from the Crown estate at Bagshot Park in Surrey, have been let out, with the profits going to the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh rather than taxpayers. A former minister called it outrageous. Weekend, UK facing new tax hikes over worst energy shock in history. Let me tell you why the energy prices are going up. It's got nothing to do with Iran. Iran is a headwind. Did you know that the cost of oil and gas, the wholesale cost, is significantly lower than it was when Russia invaded Ukraine? It's gone up. It's a little bump. It's completely tiny compared to the energy shock of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And yet, we are so indebted. We are sailing so close to the sun as an economy that we can't handle any sorts of headwinds at all. Why? Because of Rachel from Accounts, Britain's first woman chancellor. Do you remember when she got in? And her big focus was to bang on about her gender. We don't care about your reproductive organs. I couldn't care less whether you're a man, a woman, or an alien from the planet Zog. Your job is to tackle unemployment, get inflation down, get the economy growing. I don't care that you're a lady or a man or something in between. But that's what she did. She made it identity politics. I'm Rachel Reeves, first woman chancellor. Probably the worst chancellor in the history of this country. And that is a very, very low bar if we look at recent efforts. She goes in and she removes all of the artwork of portraits of much more successful men that used to do her job and replaced it with ladies. And then the other thing she did is stripped out the urinals at number 11. That was her great achievement. Meanwhile, the economy's in the toilet, and Labour, of course, they're loving the Iran war because that can be the fig leaf, the political shield that actually covers up their failures in office, because it was two awful budgets, the national insurance tax raid and the clobbering of wealth creators who are now leaving the country in their droves. That's why we've got inflation. That's why we've got debts. That's why we've got the return of unemployment. That's why we've got no growth. It's been in the direction of 2 years now that they've been in power, and things have got immeasurably worse. In fact, you've got no idea. Out there in the real economy, I am genuinely scared because I think we're going to hell in a handcart. And my heart goes out to whoever wins the next election because it's going to be an absolute dumpster fire. The Guardian newspaper, Trump brands NATO cowards over war. He's absolutely right. And Women's Hour presenter Jenny Murray dies at the age of 75. God bless her and may she rest in peace. Jenny Murray, in my humble opinion, brilliant broadcaster. You know when you switch on the radio and you hear a voice and they just personify that brand? For me, Jenny Murray was Radio 2. So, Radio... well, there you go. I've immediately got the brand. Radio 4. But do you remember Wogan? Do you remember Terry Wogan? Terry Wogan. Terry Wogan on Radio 2. A genius. Terry Wogan, a genius. Well, Wogan was Radio 2, wasn't he? And God bless Jenny Murray. For me, she was Radio 4. Women's Hour. She didn't take any prisoners. She was no nonsense. She was a great journalist. And there's also something very rare that Jenny Murray had that you don't have so much in the media, which is a proper broadcaster with a proper broadcaster's voice. Treat yourself later once we've come off air. Jump on YouTube and have a listen to an interview by Jenny Murray. That voice was silky. She was a really, really great craftswoman. of the genre. A genius, honestly. Jenny Murray, I didn't agree. She was pretty woke. She was crazily left-wing. You had to be to work at the BBC. She was more left-wing than Che Guevara. She made Jeremy Corbyn look like a moderate. But beautiful voice, great skill, and a great loss to the medium. And of course, by the way, Dean, of course she was dumped by the BBC, even though she had massive ratings, just like Ken Bruce. Ken Bruce is another great one, isn't he? Oh, Ken Bruce. By the way, it's not time for Impressions Hour. You're not listening to Mike Yarwood. A couple more papers before Duncan Barks comes in. The Times newspaper, PM agrees Trump can use bases to strike Iran. It's hilarious, isn't it? Because old Starmer has pleased no one. At the beginning of the war, all Trump wanted was access to UK air bases to refuel America's jets. That's all he wanted to do, is refuel his jets in order to take down and disarm the most wicked regime since the Third Reich. The regime which is the largest sponsor of terror in the world. Donald, this is a moral war. This is a noble war. Now, it's complex. It may backfire. It could be a disaster. But old Trump is doing this for the right reasons. We're going to discuss this with Sir Michael Fabricant later. And he's actually very supportive of the war, but then lots of Trump supporters are not. But the bottom line is the motivation to do this war are good. Trump's got no skin in the game, folks. Donald Trump gains nothing from this war. And that's why I believe it's a noble war. So what I mean by that is that this war in Iran is going to cost America a lot of money. In fact, Congress has just asked for another $200 billion to fund the war. So it's costing America money. It's definitely going to increase inflation in the United States. And Donald Trump promised no foreign wars. So there are no, and even his base, his supporters, the MAGA base, don't want this. They feel betrayed. So Donald Trump has nothing to gain from this war in Iran, which begs the question, why is he doing it? And the answer is, the only conclusion you can come to is that he's a good and honourable man who thinks this regime have to finally be dealt with. Because until now, the whole Iran thing, it's been a talking shop, hasn't it? Chatty, chatty, chatty. Meeting, meeting. Diplomatic relations. And what do they call them? Bilaterals. I was going to say bisexuals. Yeah, they brought bisexuals in to try and sort it out. They literally brought confused people in to make peace. No, but anyway, so I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have I lost the plot here? I think the war is, you know, it's never great, is it? And Trump said he wouldn't do wars. But given that he's not gaining anything from this tells me that it's a moral crusade and it's the right thing to do. Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Daily Telegraph, Trump ready to put boots on the ground in Iran. And Home Office tries to block new security for Harry. It's 6:20, one of my favourite broadcasters. It's 6:21. Shall we read? Luckily, this isn't live. Thank goodness for that. What we're going to do next, one of my favourite broadcasters, live in the studio, front pages, some big stories. Don't go anywhere.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I've got to tell you a very funny story at 6:24 on Talk Breakfast. Woke councillors are giving therapy to their staff because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. We're going to give you the inside story on that very shortly. Dan says, good morning, Mark. 2029 will be the start of a British civil war. If Farage gets in, the left wing will kick off. And if Polanski of the Greens gets in, the right wing will kick off. Looking forward to the show. Yes, it'll be pretty dramatic, won't it? Bill in Romsey, good morning, Mark. Rachel Reeves cannot believe her luck. Now she has the excuse of the Iran war to cover up her mistakes. But I think as the war goes on, this could be the end of Mad Miliband. Bill, you're so right, because what this war has done has been to expose the weaknesses of our military, of our economy, and of our energy supply, not to mention the dire lack of leadership. Well, at 6:25 on Talk Breakfast on a Saturday morning, we've brought in some leadership. So Dean Spencer, executive producer, is back. He had to get the numbers up. And my fellow ratings monster is Duncan Barnes.
Monster,
Hello, Duncan.
good morning.
Duncan, it's lovely to see you. Talk host and also contributor as well.
Thank you.
So much to get through.
Yep.
Can you help me with this war in Iran? Because from my point of view, Donald Trump appears to have nothing to gain from this war. It's inflationary.
Yep.
The MAGA base don't want it.
Nope.
He said there would be no foreign wars. They've already lost 7 or 8 American servicemen, which is very, very sad.
Yeah.
So if old Trump's got nothing to gain from it, doesn't that make it a noble war?
I remain confused as to why he decided to pursue this course of action. The only thing I can come back to, and of course it was Israel who did the strikes first. You know, Israel are absolutely adamant that they had intelligence that Iran's nuclear capability was almost there. Right. That's why they said, look, we had to go and strike Iran.
Days or weeks, because they've been enriching uranium.
Exactly that. Now, I think people listening and watching Talk this morning and hearing our conversation, I think most people would take the view, and they should take the view, that you could not allow Iran to have a nuclear capability, right? They can't be trusted with it. Their regime has gone on the record since 1979 to say they wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the planet.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you look at what Trump has done and decided to pick this fight, and it is a fight, you could say he's doing it for the good of the globe, right? The good of the world. Because I can't see what the benefits are otherwise, for all of the reasons you just outlined, because domestically it doesn't play out well.
No.
His core base are going, what are you doing?
He's pleasing almost no one with it.
Exactly. There are economic implications, not just to the US, but to the rest of us around the world. I mean, I was driving in earlier and I was on the motorway. I saw £1.80 for a litre of diesel, which is the highest I've ever seen. And I've also noticed that unleaded, yesterday I was seeing kind of the cheaper petrol stations at around 143, 144. Now I'm seeing 146, 147. So daily, on a daily basis, it is going up.
It's horrendous.
And that's before it gets us into this whole area of how it's going to impact on food costs, because it's going to cost more to get the food to the supermarkets and the trucks, because they're going to need more diesel, which is more expensive. It's going to cost more to produce food. If you're a farmer, you're going to end up paying more for fertilizer, because it's based on some of the chemicals that are created out of oil. So this has mass implications. And I do find myself, I think like you, just going, why are you doing this, Donald? Why are you doing this? And the point you made a few moments ago, I think, and this is, I was going to say it's a positive, but you can argue it's a positive, because it has shown the weaknesses around the world, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. Particularly in this country, where sadly we have seen the very stark reality coming to light that our military has been hollowed out, right? We still don't have HMS Dragon down in the Mediterranean or in the Middle East to protect Cyprus.
Where is it now?
It was last seen off Gibraltar.
Gibraltar, brilliant.
Scheduled to get there on Monday. All right,
Are they going via Tenerife or something? What's going on?
I don't know. But it's... And
Are there holiday makers on board expecting a trip to Alicante?
The Royal Navy, and I say this with respect because I know people who have served, but I say this tongue-in-cheek, you know, maybe they're so in need of money because successive governments have failed to fund them adequately. They're actually doing a little bit of a side hustle, bit of a cruise going on. You know, come with us on the trip down to the Middle East. We'll go past Jib. You can wave at the apes on the rock, you know, that kind of stuff. But it has shown, sadly, just how stark the situation is regarding our lack of military capability. But just going back to your original question, you know, what ultimately, what is Trump's gain out of this? And I don't see it. And I mean, you know, some of the newspapers this morning, Mark, are talking about boots on the ground.
Well, that's right. That's right. They're particularly focused on Karg Island, which is the main oil port of Iran. That's the epicenter. That's where 80% of the oil lands before it's shipped overseas. So it's strategically not just significant, critical. And I mean, and it's difficult. I mean, in one of yesterday's papers, I think it was the Times, they were talking about Netanyahu saying the only way we can actually get regime change is by having boots on the ground in Iran. And you go, well, that kind of makes sense, but is there the global support for that? Problem with boots on the ground, apart from the casualties, is that you're looking at months, if not years.
Exactly.
And of course, what Trump was hoping is that technology would be the answer. You'd have these airstrikes. They've sunk the Navy, literally and metaphorically. There's no Air Force now. Boots on the ground is a whole new ratcheting up of the situation. I'm not sure Trump has the appetite for that. I'm hearing regarding where the White House are at 50-50 for boots on the ground. It won't play well at home either. But what you're looking at, you know, is disarming this regime. And therefore, I think Trump's position now regarding regime changes, it actually doesn't matter who's in charge because it's a toothless tiger. The other thought with the boots on the ground, the threat of this potential assault on Karg Island, which basically finishes Iran as a country, because without the sale of oil, that's it, they're done. And I think maybe this is a flex and I think a negotiating position. And I'm absolutely certain that whoever's left within the Iranian regime will, in the weeks ahead, do a deal with the US and Israel. I'm certain of it.
You think so?
Yeah, because they've got no cards. To paraphrase Donald Trump to Zelensky a few months ago.
I mean, I think Trump's position has shifted, hasn't it, on regime change? Because if you go back a few weeks, he was urging the people of Iran to rise up against the regime. And that shifted a little bit now, because I think he's realised that they have seen how brutally people are treated if they go up against the regime. You know, we're talking some estimates of 30 to 40,000 people have been murdered, not killed, let's not use the word killed, murdered by the regime because they dare to say they want a different way of living, they want different people in charge. And I think Donald Trump's error at the start was to go, hey, listen, we're going to weaken the regime, you need to finish the job, you need to come in and rise up against these people. And actually the people of Iran, I think, have seen just how brutal the clampdown has been. They're not prepared to do it, and I can understand why.
That's right, and of course we know that the Iranian National Guard, the IRGC, control the country on behalf of the regime. So essentially, even if you kill the guy at the top, the snake, you cut the head off the snake.
Another one pops up.
This is exactly it, and it's here to stay. But you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm naive about Trump in calling this a noble war. But I just always in life look at people's incentives. It's like follow the money.
Exactly that.
And I just don't see how Trump has skin in the game. If you wanted, you know, put a gun to my head, what is he thinking? Why is he doing this? I think he's John Wayne.
In what way?
I think Donald Trump is John Wayne, and it's a spaghetti western. And he's just dealing with those evil Mexicans.
Because he sees that as his job.
Yeah. I think he's John Wayne.
The world's policeman.
He's clearing out the bad guys. I think he's a western.
No,
and I think he's a cowboy. And I think he's got Trigger the horse, right? And he's in the saloon. And I think that's what I think he's.
So should we support him over
a figure like that? Well, I mean, if you watch a spaghetti western, if you're not on John Wayne's side, I can't help you.
Exactly. You see, but if you
I know it seems like I'm trivialising.
No, you're not.
But I think Trump thinks in those binary ways.
I think
he's
you're
like,
right.
these people over here are causing us a problem. They're the bad guys. I'm the sheriff. There's a new sheriff in town.
There's a new sheriff in town. If that is the case, and I don't think you are trivialising it at all, does that mean that if he decides to deal harshly with North Korea, or other regimes around the world, we just go, well done, Donald, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And someone needs to actually confront these people, because it's for the good of the people of that country and it's good for the world. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I mean, look, here's your choice, folks. You know, and I could be wrong about this. You know, I think we're all having to get up to speed on Middle Eastern politics, aren't we? I mean, I promise you, a month ago, I thought the Strait of Hormuz was a pub in East London. Right. Happy hour
with bingo on a Wednesday night.
Amazing. Karaoke as well on a Tuesday. Yeah. But the bottom line is that, you know, who knows? I need your help on this 0344 499 1000. Is it a noble war? Briefly, just on the politics of this, you know, notwithstanding, you know, and by the way, you know, if it's proved that this was just the Iraq War 2.0 and the biggest strategic mistake from America in 30 years, I'll put my hands up and go, okay, it was a terrible mistake, and how dare I have even thought it might have been a good thing. Briefly, though, the politics for Starmer, catastrophic.
It is, and also for Rachel Reeves as well, because here we have a country, our country, where the economy is just in a really bad state. You know, we have the embarrassing spectacle of a chancellor celebrating what is predicted to be in 2026 just over 1% in growth. 1% in growth, right? It's just embarrassing. And I'm not just here to bash Labour, even though I do think it's the worst government in my entire lifetime. But if you look at the last two budgets, or the first two budgets of Rachel Reeves, they've been so anti-business, so anti-enterprise. You can see it for yourself. The hospitality sector is on its knees. Unemployment's at a 5-year high. People aren't hiring people because it's become more expensive. Yeah. All of this matters. Our economy is not in a good place. We had the recent borrowing figures come out a few days ago. You know, we were predicted to be borrowing for the last 4 weeks something around 4 or 5 million quid. It turns out to be about 14 billion quid. I mean, it's unbelievable. And our debt interest, that's the interest we pay on servicing the money we've already borrowed, currently comes in at £105 billion a year. So it's not paying off the rump of the debt, you know, like your credit card. You're not paying off the original sum. It's the debt interest. All of this matters because Rachel Reeves, is trying to get the economy back on track, and you have something like this coming along, which is beyond their control, right? What's happening with Iran is beyond the control of Starmer and indeed Reeves. There's that great quote from Harold Macmillan. Do you remember? British Prime Minister Supermac, who said, "Events, dear boy, events." These things happen that blow governments off course. And just when Reeves is scratching around desperately to try and get the economy back on track, something like this happens. It impacts on the cost of living. Inflation's going to go up. What's she going to do about it?
Correct. Yeah. If I put you in number 11, because you've got a brain on you and common sense.
I've got a GCSE in economics.
Well, that makes you a financial wizard compared to old Rachel from accounts, who, let's be honest, her CV raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
Well, she's a good fiction writer.
Most definitely. But if I put you in number 11, and I'd do it in the absolute blink of an eye. Because I think what you would try to do is you'd get the debt down, you'd shrink the welfare bill, and then you would incentivise businesses to employ people. That would be like
look, you know, some people listening and watching Talk this morning, particularly in the north of England, whose communities were devastated throughout the miners' strike, might bristle at this, but I'm an old school Thatcherite, right? I believe in low taxation, small state. I believe in incentivising people to work. I believe in allowing people to keep more of the money that they earn and actually encouraging people to create wealth and money. And that's what I would do if I was in 11 Downing Street.
I honestly box for number 11, because what you would get with that is you'd have 3.5%, 4% growth.
Yeah.
What is that? That's national income, and that's money you can then spend on public services and give to poor people who deserve it. And
we need radical thinking, we need radical measures, and we don't have anyone prepared to do it. I mean, Richard Tice from Reform UK, who I listen to a lot when he does his economic speeches. That's not his brief now, because of course it's Robert Jenrick is the kind of Treasury spokesperson or the Shadow Chancellor or whatever. But you know, Tice, his background or his ethos is very much old school Thatcherite economics, and that's what you need. You need to be quite radical here. Labour won't be remotely radical. You know, Starmer is terrified of his Labour backbenchers to do anything regarding pruning the welfare budget. Rachel Reeves, I mean, is I hate the phrase "a dead person walking," but that's what she comes across as. She's got no authority. The track record speaks.
Yeah, but it's like a zombie government. It is a zombie government. Now you can't kill them. You know, you sort of it's like that Shaun of the Dead. You know, you shoot them and they just get back up again.
Another non-entity appears.
Yeah, they climb out of the grave and stagger towards you.
Exactly.
It doesn't work. I mean, what about this for a stat? Which will just read it and weep, folks. At 6:38. This is from City AM, which is a very good business newspaper.
Excellent paper, yeah.
1 in 5 founders expect to leave the UK in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Right? 1 in 5, there's people that started businesses. 1 in 5, 20% of them will be gone in a year, folks. Let that sink in. Briefly, Duncan, why does that matter to my viewers and listeners? Why should they care?
It matters because these people take risks. They work all of the hours that are available to make their businesses a success. They employ people. That is good for the economy. More people employed means more people have got money to spend on all kinds of areas, including the hospitality sector, including in shops, including for all kinds of goods and services, which is good for the economy. If you have these entrepreneurs and these wealth creators leaving, you don't have people employing other people and contributing to the nation's economy.
Duncan Barks knows the leader of Reform UK very well indeed. And we've got a story about the leader of Reform UK. A woke council is offering its staff counselling and therapy because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:41. Front pages, Daily Telegraph. Trump ready to put boots on the ground, and Home Office blocks plans to provide security to Prince Harry. With me live in the studio, Talk presenter and broadcaster Duncan Barks. And Duncan, what about this story? A woke council is offering its staff counselling and therapy because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. I mean, what's going to happen to these people when he becomes Prime Minister?
Oh, I mean, it's just, I read this and I pathetic is just the mildest word I could use. Do you know what really depresses me about this, Mark, is we have generations, our parents' generations and our grandparents' generations, who went to war to protect this country, all right, and came back after seeing some of the most horrific things that you could ever possibly imagine done to their friends, their comrades, their fellow human beings and stuff. And they came back and they dealt with it and they never talked about it. They never had the option of counselling or talking therapies. We're talking about real trauma. And then you have this pathetic story of this council going, well, Nigel Farage is coming to our city and that might upset you a little bit, so we can offer you some counselling. I mean, what has happened to this nation? What is the matter with people?
I want to upset these people because there's something wrong with them.
Let's upset them. How can we do it?
I just mean that it's like they're snowflakes, but they're illiberal.
They
and
are
undemocratic. If you're somebody that needs therapy because someone whose views you don't share, who's probably going to be our next Prime Minister, is coming to your town, then you're not right in the head.
No.
And I therefore will show you no mercy. Let's have a look at the details of the story. Workers can expect a safe space if they are upset at the Reform UK leader's trip to Leeds. Bosses admit next Tuesday's local election campaigning event has no direct impact on the Labour-controlled council or its workforce. The details emerged in an email to staff from its HR chief, John Ebbo. He writes the following: no doubt you'll have picked up in the news that Nigel Farage and Reform are holding an event/rally. I'm mindful such events impact on colleagues, and would ask that we enable safe space conversations for colleagues such as the Wellbeing Network chats. The email was forwarded to the council's Race Equality Staff Network, whatever the heck that is, with the additional warning, be vigilant if you are in the city centre that day. One council staffer said they don't email us about pro-Palestine protests or green events. The insider said it's a scandal how brainwashed many council bosses are. Taxpayers need to know what they're getting for their money and who is spending it.
I know.
It's wild. I mean, it's funny, but it's scary at the same time.
Well, it's fundamentally depressing as well as being scary. So there are a couple of questions here. What is this safe space? Are we talking like a ball pit that you take your 3-year-olds to? Is it a padded room? What is this safe space that we're talking about?
Need.
You know. Secondly, taxpayers in Leeds, presumably, if this council in Leeds City Council, are offering some kind of counselling, I'm presuming that it's going to be paid for by taxpayers in the city. What a waste of taxpayers' money. And then the other point, and you mentioned this earlier, all right, I fully accept there are people who don't like Nigel Farage, don't like Reform UK, don't like their policies. Well, that's what happens when you live in a democracy. If you don't like it, suck it up and go and do whatever you want to do and go and vote for whoever you want to vote for, and good luck to you, because that's the beauty of this country at the moment. We can vote for who we want to vote for, and we allow political parties of all colours to say what they want to say, including the ghastly Green Party. I mean, I would need counselling. If Zach Polanski from the Green Party came to my town or city, my counselling would be to go to have 4 pints of bitter and pretend he didn't exist. And that's how you deal with it. Taxpayers shouldn't have to fork out for staff counselling because a leader of a political party is going to rock up in their city and some of the staff members are going to go, I don't like him.
Well, actually, given his previous career, if Zach Polanski came to my town, I'd bring the missus along, actually.
Well, yeah.
He could work his magic, you know.
He could work his magic on your missus, and maybe he could also work his magic on my man boobs and reduce the size of them by hypnotising me.
If you pay extra, you can have them shrunk, apparently.
Can
That's
you?
True. Yeah.
By Zany Zach.
Zany Zach, that could really stick as a headline, isn't it? These people, they don't know what's coming in 2029, do they?
I don't think they do. And it's interesting, you had a message that came in a few moments ago from a talk viewer and listener talking about, and I never want this to happen because I do love this country, about this idea that there might be a civil war. There will be a conflict if Reform get into government or get a majority, or even if it's a Reform-led government, and that's kind of, I mean, you know, given our perverse first past the post voting system, not necessarily a shoo-in for Reform. If there is a Reform government or Reform-led government, you are going to see vast chunks, I believe, of the civil service kicking off and simply going, we're not going to implement these policies. I mean, there will be not a civil war, but I think there will be it'll be a political war. A war
between the incoming government and the establishment.
Yeah, and the blob, yeah.
The blob. And it's concerning. Now, Duncan, you know about Brexit derangement syndrome. It's the irrational hatred of Brexit.
Yeah.
You could argue, some would say Brexit's been great because we don't pay £20 billion a year for membership. We're out of those treaties. We've got sovereignty. If we chose to, which we haven't chosen to, we control our borders. Yeah. Fine. Some people think that it's impacted the economy, whatever. Yeah. Trump derangement syndrome. You could love the guy, you can hate him. Yeah. But what it is, it's irrational. And now we are on the precipice, Duncan Barks, of Farage derangement syndrome. Get used to it at 6:47 on Talk Breakfast. FDS, which is not where you buy a sofa. Okay. Farage derangement syndrome is coming. And the problem with it, Duncan, is that it's dangerous.
Mark, it
because
already
if you
exists.
demonise people like Nigel Farage, what is the corollary of that? Look what happened to Trump at that rally before the election.
It's already there. Sadly, sometimes when I go out and have a beer, I drink in a couple of places, and I know I keep mentioning this, but it's relevant because
keep mentioning it.
And there are people there who know that I've known Nigel Farage since 2010, right? And occasionally they come along and they kind of like, they bring it up, and all they want to do is talk about how bad Brexit is. And I'm just like, I'm to have a beer with my dog. I'm not remotely interested in your views on Brexit. But they think because I've known Nigel since 2010 that I'm fair game to have a go at because of Brexit. And these people are seriously nuts. Right? Because I will say to them, because sometimes I find it hard to switch off from being a broadcaster and a journalist, I will go, you might not like him, but you have to concede he is our most effective campaigner and the most influential politician of the last 30 years.
Bingo.
And some look like they're going to burst into tears. Others look like they're going to hit me. Seriously, this guy is living rent-free in people's heads.
But also, they focus on Brexit so much. I mean, if you want my sort of dispassionate overview of Brexit, I would say that it's been a nothing burger, right? I think you've had disruption, and my heart goes out to small businesses. You know, the little company that makes fingerless gloves that are popular in sort of Madrid. You know, that's tricky because there's friction, yada yada. So I think it's wrong to deny there hasn't been. But the bottom line is, we've had higher economic growth than Germany since Brexit.
Correct.
So there's been no crash, no flight of capital, no emergency budget. The project fear did not matter. So at best, Brexit was meh.
My view...
And yet people treat it like it was World War III.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, my view is Brexit was a missed opportunity. I think there was a dereliction of duty on behalf of David Cameron and George Osborne, who, it's now on the record, did not instruct the civil service to prepare properly for a leave vote. Consequently, when 52% of people said, we want out, it was like, oh, what do we do now? And that was just disgusting, a lack of leadership from the Conservatives at the time. It could have been successful. We didn't have the leadership in place to make it successful. We didn't have the MPs in Parliament prepared to actually take at face value. That was what the majority of people in this country wanted. And, you know, I'm going to have a little bit of a rant. Have I got time for 30 seconds to rant?
Oh, my God, knock it
There's
out.
this awful organisation called Prosper. Prosper is a group of Conservatives led by Ruth Davidson and Andy Street, who used to be the mayor of the West Midlands.
Bunch of Tory wets.
Exactly
Closet
that.
Lib Dems.
And it's people...
Should have been chucked out of the party years ago.
I can't disagree with anything you've just said. And it's people in that segment of the Conservative Party who were problematic when it came to implementing Brexit. You know, people like Dominic Grieve. You're absolutely right. They shouldn't have been in the Conservative Party. You know, they should be under the leadership of the Benny Hill of politics, Ed Davey, and the Lib Dems. You know, and that was fundamentally one of the reasons why Brexit failed, because ultimately the Conservative Party at the time did not do the right thing by the people of this country.
Coming up, yet another example of Muslim public prayer. It was 3,000 people, Dean Spencer, at Trafalgar Square. It's caused a national uproar. Well, what about this? 30,000 Muslims in a Birmingham park. How British is that? Meanwhile, Labour's immigration betrayal. All of that is next.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:54 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. You will not believe this story. A woke council are offering its staff therapy because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. Michael says, good morning, Mark and Duncan. The civil service is dominated by a fifth column. You can't get a job if you don't come from a radical background and don't have progressive beliefs. The induction courses are shocking. Stuart says, good morning, boys. Let's hope that everyone who voted for Brexit votes for reform on May the 7th and also at the next general election, and that we can both implement Brexit properly and save our once great country. Jane says, good morning both. Lovely hearing Duncan's calming voice. I was at a party last night, so don't speak too loudly, Jane. God bless you. Jane, personal recommendation, Hair of the Dog.
Yeah.
Works for Dean Spencer, the executive producer of the show. Right, listen, folks, let's get to some big stories. We have yet another public display of Muslim prayer. This time, 30,000 Muslims in a Birmingham park in a mass outdoor prayer to mark the end of Ramadan. Now, no one's got a problem with people worshipping in their mosque, at home, church, synagogue, you name it. What about this public display of faith? Do you think it's British? Is it appropriate, Duncan?
So this country has always been a fair and tolerant nation. I think we've sadly been too fair and tolerant in the past, and it's coming back to bite us on the backside. I'm more than happy for people to worship whichever being or supreme being or God they choose, but I'm with you. Do it in the church, do it in the mosque, do it in the synagogue, or whatever. I saw the pictures from Trafalgar Square, which I thought were inappropriate. I think potentially what's going to happen in Birmingham is also inappropriate as well. And it's increasingly hard not to reach the conclusion. We're living in a country where we have this almost like this two-tier tolerance of religion, all right? You know, we've got documented cases of Jewish guys with skull caps who might be out in London on a Saturday afternoon when one of these marches is taking place, and the police are going, you need to go from this area because that might be seen as provocative. What? Hello? In what world? Would they do that to someone who was openly, clearly Muslim? I don't think they would, right? I think it's that simple. You know, we have Christian preachers getting arrested and moved on. Again, outside abortion clinics, people who are silently praying, and the police will come along and just go, this is not appropriate. Would they do that to someone who believes in Islam? No, I don't think they would. And I think increasingly we are seeing in this country this almost two-tier tolerance of religion, and that's not acceptable.
Meanwhile, Labour rebels threaten a common showdown over Shabana Mahmood's crackdown on immigration. Now, this is an important story. It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. We had the Boris wave in the region of 3 million people from 2021 flooded into the country, partly because Boris was told by the Home Office and the Blob that we needed these people to fill the skills gap because others had left the country during the pandemic, and also that it would keep inflation down because, of course, it would bring wages down. But the problem we've got now is that the sensible move by this government to double the length of time in which you receive indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10 years may be reversed by a Prime Minister looking over his shoulder at Angela Rayner, who said that this crackdown is un-British, and the Greens, who want open borders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is just the latest example, isn't it, of Keir Starmer trying to protect his own position and his, well, whatever might be described as what he's trying to achieve as a legacy. We saw it with the welfare reforms. He wasn't prepared to face down his backbenchers over that. We're seeing it with this particular case now and the immigration reforms because, one, he knows that if he doesn't back down, then when it comes to a leadership challenge, and I believe it'll happen after May the 7th, after local elections. I think it's going to happen. Yeah, I was talking to a professor of politics during the week. He's absolutely adamant as well. I think they're going to go after that. It's going to be a disastrous set of election results for Labour. But he knows that if he tries to support these immigration reforms by Shabana Mahmood, then people like Angela Rayner will go up against him. He can't afford that to happen because he needs as much support as possible if he's going to remain Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party.
Quite extraordinary stuff. With me in the studio, the brilliant talk presenter and contributor, Duncan Barks. A very, very big hour to come. So much to go at, folks. The special relationship in ruins as a furious Donald Trump blasts Sir Keir Starmer for Britain's, and I quote, very late response in the Iran war, as the PM finally allows America to use British bases. And Labour's immigration betrayal. It could cost you and I, wait for it, £25 billion. So much to get through. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Past 7. Top of the morning to you. Happy Saturday, one and all. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan, and your weekend starts here. A packed show for you, and breaking this morning, the special relationship in ruins as a furious Donald Trump blasts Sir Keir Starmer for Britain's, and I quote, very late response, as the PM finally allows America to use British bases to strike Iran. Labour's immigration betrayal as the left wing of the party, led by Angela Rayner herself, seek yet another U-turn this time giving 3 million Boris Wave immigrants indefinite leave to remain. This is a move that could cost the country £250 billion. It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock. Let me tell you, it might get me cancelled. Good. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is still calling himself His Royal Highness, HRH, and another public display of religiosity from the British Muslim community as 30,000 worshippers participate in a mass outdoor prayer in Birmingham. Is this sort of public display of religion un-British? Is it a threat to British culture and the way of life? And why the deafening silence from the Church of England, given that it's supposed to be a Christian country? We'll be speaking to a top cleric who's not happy. Meanwhile, the Home Office tried to block Prince Harry's efforts to get armed royal protection in the UK. Are you happy to pay your taxes for the Duke of Double Standards to be protected when he's in Britain? Let me know your thoughts. And how about this? A woke council is offering its staff therapy because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. What happens when he becomes Prime Minister? There's going to be a meltdown. Lovely to have your company on the radio, DAB+, in-app and online. You can also watch the show because it is a TV programme with live guests, pictures, news footage, you name it. All you got to do is head to YouTube, search Talk and Up We Pop. And Davis is directing our output today. We've upgraded the engineer. Dave has been put out to pasture. He's had his day. I'm afraid, we have a shelf life. And I'm delighted to say that Luke is pressing the buttons. No, lovely Dave's having a break, but he'll be back next week. And, of course, Dean Spencer, the executive producer of the show, had to come back to get the numbers up. And the brilliant Sholape is taking your calls. She's got a velvet voice, the brain the size of a planet. Find out just how smart she is by giving her a call now. 0344 499 1000. Is public Muslim prayer un-British? Is it a threat to our culture? I want your opinions. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And we kick off this hour with today's front pages. The Daily Telegraph newspaper, Trump ready to put boots on the ground, and Home Office try to block new security for Harry, and farewell to the women's champion. Jenny Murray, the Radio 4 presenter, the host, of course, of Woman's Hour back in the day, has passed at the age of 75. Let me tell you that I think she was a broadcasting genius. May she rest in peace. Not just her delivery, that voice, but just such an excellent communicator. Really, really loved that lady. The Sun newspaper, Prince Ed Wad. The Duke raked in 130 grand a year by subletting royal stable block. This is a rare bad headline for Prince Edward, who I think we can all agree normally stays out of trouble. Daily Mail, IRA victims devastated as Jerry Adams' trial collapses amid chaos. And Jenny Murray, 1950 to 2026, a towering champion of women. Very sad. She was actually writing for the Daily Mail newspaper up until quite recently. Daily Star boxing icon inquest. Tragic Ricky had brain disease. Ricky Hatton, a true British sporting legend. It may well be that he did not seek to take his own life when he was found dead. Let's have a look at the Mirror now. Loss of a working class hero. My Ricky's last hug almost broke my ribs. Daily Express. Eventually we will win right to die battle. Campaigners seeking people who are seriously ill to have the right to choose their time of passing. iWeekend. UK facing tax hikes over worst energy shock in history. It's not the energy shock. It is not the war in Iran. It is two devastating budgets. It is the national insurance tax rate. It is the flight of wealth creators who are moving overseas because of the highest tax burden since the Second World War. That's why we've got inflation. That's why we've got unemployment. That's why we've got zero growth. But of course, Rachel from Accounts will be using the war in Iran as her political fig leaf. The Sun newspaper, we've covered that, the Prince Edward. And finally, the Times newspaper, PM agrees Trump can use bases to strike Iran. But is it too little too late? Live in the studio, Duncan Barks, talk host and broadcaster. And no less than the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello.
I'm so glad that the Mail and the Mail on Sunday are still going, notwithstanding Prince Harry's efforts to shut you guys down. You can't talk about the details of it, but long may you reign supreme. Great to see you in studio. We're going to mention Harry in a moment, because, of course, it looks like there are figures at the Home Office seeking to thwart his efforts to have armed royal protection in the UK. Can we start with the special relationship? It strikes me that Sir Keir has pleased no one, because now he's helping America in its efforts to disarm Iran, having previously not granted access to UK air bases for refuelling. So he's annoyed the president, and he's annoyed those who oppose the war.
It's not very hard to annoy the president, that's the only thing. I mean, what did Donald Trump expect? I mean, of course Keir Starmer did this. That's what he does. And I remember he lashed out and said, oh, why did you waste time asking your colleagues and other MPs whether you could take part? And it's like, well, that's what Keir Starmer does. He does everything by the book, very slowly, lots of bureaucracy, and that's just who he is. I'm not apologising for him. I can imagine it was maddening for Trump, but, you know.
Well, that's right, because I don't know if you saw that piece in the Sunday Times last weekend, but it was a few Labour insiders who have worked with the Prime Minister, and they said he completely lacks imagination. He's the least curious person they've ever worked with, and all he wants to do, his comfort zone, is to spend 3 hours reading notes and just poring over paperwork rather than making a decision.
Yeah, I mean, he's the polar opposite of Trump, isn't he?
Yeah, and the thing is, though, but that's not leadership, is it? He's a manager. He's not a leader. He is a manager. I remember he did an interview a few years ago. I can't remember which newspaper it was for, but he was asked, does he have a favourite book?
Yes, I remember that.
He didn't have a favourite book.
Answer.
Well, what is the matter with this man? I mean, it's almost like he's terrified of having an opinion about anything, or genuinely he's got no hinterland whatsoever. That is just like, no, I don't. Give me a research paper about my favourite book.
He's computer says no personified,
Exactly,
isn't he?
yeah.
I think he'd be much better off at a second-hand car dealership. That's kind of where his next job will be.
Well, you raise a good question, Charlotte Griffiths, because would you buy a used Toyota Prius from Keir Starmer, right? When
That's the only kind of car he'd sell.
Take my word for it, it's reliable. You're like, well, in that case, it's going to blow up on the M25.
But do you know what? He's not a second-hand car salesman, because that requires a bit of charisma and personality to get the deal over the line. What he is he's a heat pump salesman, right? That's what he is. He doesn't have to persuade you. He morally bashes you. You want this because it's for the good of the planet. Yes. Of course you want this. Let me give you 75 pages as to why you should buy my heat pump, because if you don't, your children will judge you in the future.
Yes.
That's what you're dealing with.
Yeah, what would happen, Charlotte? You'd buy the heat pump just to make him go away.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do we stop this man speaking?
I don't want to read all these documents he keeps producing for me.
Well, if he was a used car salesman, I'm glad you sort of painted that image of Starmer. He would make Arthur Daly look positively trustworthy, I think. Because that's the issue. Other issue I've got with Starmer is I think he's slippery, and I think he speaks out of two sides of the same mouth. And he's got different audiences. He was originally the Trump whisperer, but now he's mindful of the Muslim vote, telling British Muslims in Westminster Hall a couple of weeks ago, very nervously, I want you all to know I wasn't part of this war at the beginning. Which is desperate stuff.
And the problem is that the moment when he resisted only lasted a few days, and this war won't last 4 weeks. It will go on for a lot longer. So that little tiny moment in history where he said, oh, no, I didn't initially jump on the bandwagon with Trump, will be forgotten about. And the Muslim vote will say, well, you did offer your bases, and that will just be forgotten.
Can we offer Starmer any sympathy, given the fact that he is trying to keep different constituencies happy? Do you have any, can there be any defence made of his equivocation?
Well, I suppose I would defend him in that what has happened is obviously Trump hasn't thought this through. Things are changing very rapidly.
How dare you?
Understatement of the century. So maybe actually in the end,
Trump
he was
is
right
the
to
king
dither.
of the spreadsheet. Are you kidding?
He was right to dither, because Trump hasn't got a clue what he's doing, as it turns out.
What I need on this one, though, Charlotte, is your brain, your journalistic instinct, and your common sense, because I'm looking at the incentives here politically for Trump. And the guy's got no skin in the game regarding the Iran war. It's annoying his MAGA base. He promised them no foreign wars. Of course, his opponents aren't happy, because anything Trump does, including cure cancer, will be swiftly rejected by the Democrats. Similarly, it's going to hurt the economy in America. Inflation, it's costing an extra. He's gone to Congress. He needs an extra $200 billion just to keep going.
Oh, my God.
So I just wonder, given the fact that Donald Trump has no identifiable political advantage from this, that it must therefore just be a moral crusade for him, that he thinks it's the right thing to do.
Well, I think obviously he's under pressure from his friend Bibi.
Is that it? So you think all roads lead to Israel?
I do think so, but I honestly think he'll get bored and wander off quite soon. It's getting quite intense at the moment, but you can tell they were already lashing out at each other this week, weren't they? And I think once those Americans who love a great big ginormous car start seeing the petrol prices going up and up and up, he'll just have to pull out eventually.
Do you think that Starmer should have been all in with Trump from day one regarding this adventure?
I rarely stick up for Starmer, but I think he was right to dither. I do think he was right to look at it and wait a little bit.
Really? I'm afraid I'm all in, Duncan, which is why it's a relief to everyone I'm not Prime Minister. Because I'm afraid to say that I think militarily and economically America holds the whip hand over us. We are the performing monkey, we're in their pocket, and if America asks us to jump, our response should be how high. I know it's sad, but that's my view.
I don't think it's necessarily sad. I mean, I share the view that Charlotte has. I mean, I'm not a Starmer fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a small degree of sympathy with him because he's dealing with the most unpredictable American president, basically, in the history of the world. However, we do have this special relationship, and I think it's something, given where we are in the world today and how reliant we are with America, and they do, to use the term, have the whip hand over us, we should have been more supportive to begin with. And I take the dithering point, and maybe your view that Starmer was right to dither, but he should have been very clear from the outset what he was prepared to do regarding supporting America, and not kind of flip-flop. And it just feeds into this narrative that he doesn't know what he believes. He's a manager, not a leader. You know, and you might not have liked, second time this morning I mentioned Margaret Thatcher. You might not have liked Margaret Thatcher. Actually, you might not have liked Tony Blair. But at least they knew what they were prepared to do. At least they knew what they believed in and where they thought this country should be going in terms of foreign policy. I
agree. If he was a good Trump whisperer, he would have said to Trump, look, I've got to get through some red tape. You know that's what I'm like, Trump, but just give me a few days. I'll be there for you. And even if he didn't, follow it up with action at first, just at least told him and reassured him and massaged the ego.
Mr. President, give me time to sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's the personality. That's the personality you're dealing with. You're absolutely right, Charlotte. If you were to just kind of like take Donald into your confidence and go, look, domestically, I know you'll get this, Donald. You know, I need to do X, Y, and Z to secure my base or my Labour backbench MPs or whatever, and then I'm there for you. Just give me a bit of time. I suspect Trump, because he is an operator, Trump would have gone, yeah, I get it. All right, well, let's do something in 2 or 3 days where we make an announcement. But I don't think Starmer has that capability. I don't think he thinks like that.
And he wasn't thinking like that, and he probably was thinking about the Muslim vote and not thinking, I'm just going to help out Trump because I am the Rolls-Royce of allies all along. But yeah, I agree with you.
Charlotte.
That's because we're right.
We are always right, aren't we?
You are, actually. I can't quite believe it. Your history is going to judge you very well and very handsomely.
We're on the right side of history.
I mean, Charlotte, this is just, Duncan and I discussed this earlier, an amazing story. Leeds City Council, who are offering members of staff therapy because Nigel Farage is heading to their town. There's going to be a safe space for conversations. What's going to happen to these people when Nigel Farage likely becomes Prime Minister?
Well, they're all going to freak out, leave their safe spaces.
A lot of duvet days happening.
I hate safe spaces. I just hate the word safe spaces.
But what is it?
I hope
what
they
is
get
a safe
eradicated.
space?
Well, you work for the Mail on Sunday, so
there is no safe space for the Mail on Sunday.
Hazardous.
Absolutely. It's like kind of there's a bunker for real explosions, but no safe space. I think outside of Leeds city centre, there's a lot of rural land, and all those people all around will be thinking, great, Trump's coming, I'll go into town today, because this is the problem with, these councillors and office managers in city centres. They just have no perspective outside of the city. They don't know what it's like to toil a field and run a farm, and they've just got no common sense.
But the biggest crime here, the biggest crime is that taxpayers in Leeds will be forking out for some kind of counselling or the creation of some kind of safe space.
100 quid an hour.
Or go knit some hessian in a corner, go make some daisy chains in a field just up the road or whatever. It makes you feel better. If that's the way of dealing with the trauma because a political leader who you don't like and whose policies you don't like is coming to the place where you work, it is utterly absurd. And I mean, I've not looked at Leeds City Council's finances, but I suspect Nod is all rosy in the garden. So consequently, it's like, how dare you abuse taxpayers' money by offering this? And it gets us into something else as well that we talked about previously, which is what is the matter with people? How have we ended up in a nation where we actually have a situation where counselling has been offered to a group of people because someone is coming to their city. I mean, not moving next door to them, but just coming to their city, and they don't like their policies or their politics. How have we ended up in such an absurd situation?
Yeah, well, one council staffer did say they don't email us like this about pro-Palestinian protests or green events.
Oh, there's a surprise.
And it also encourages them to speak on the Wellbeing Network chat. Now, whatever the Wellbeing Network chat is, I bet you it costs a huge fortune, and it's some sort of council app that they invested in and had meeting after meeting after meeting about. And it says here that it's a scandal how brainwashed many council bosses are, and I totally think that's right. I think they're brainwashed, and it will go on for generation and generation. This is just now how public servants think, and I just can't see it ever changing.
They are brainwashed because they don't live in the real world, and I mean, I know people who work for councils and still do, and they live in a bubble because their job is relatively well protected because a lot of the staff is severely unionised.
Yeah.
They are funded by other people's money, right? So I hear stories of how money is spent, you know, literally hand over fist, because there's no accountability, because it's not their money. Then you roll into that a mindset that is remarkably tolerant in terms of people's certain beliefs or fads or whatever. Then you roll into that quite a chunky gold-plated pension for most people, and these people live in a bubble that the rest of us just find increasingly bizarre.
Yeah, well, half of them are off sick with stress for 10 months as well, aren't they? That's the other thing.
Well, and I was going to say that Leeds is, of course, a student city.
Yep.
So they're surrounded by, you know, students who are, of course, lefties and, you know, super woke.
with green hair.
When will they ever break out?
Isn't the point, Charlotte, that of course you don't have to like Nigel Farage. Many people think that the Reform Project, including some Conservatives, is sort of, you know, back of the fag packet politics, you know, it's just sort of 3 pints in policies. And there is a case to answer for what Nigel is planning to do and whether he can deliver, of course. And it's the same for Zach Polanski, it's the same for the Prime Minister. But these people have got an irrational hatred of one figure. It's Brexit derangement syndrome, it's Trump derangement syndrome, and now we're calling it FDS, which is not a furniture shop. It is Farage derangement syndrome. And it's a problem, isn't it? Because if he becomes Prime Minister, he's going to have these, you know, civil servants, these local authorities working against what he's trying to do.
Absolutely, and they'll probably disobey any kind of new rules or regulations that come in, as we've seen with the acknowledging acknowledging women's safe spaces. They've just ignored it, you know,
you're
because
right.
it doesn't
The
agree with their
Supreme Court
policies.
ruling, they've ignored it. They're actually breaking the law, technically.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous, but nobody's enforcing the law because guess what? Those are the same kind of people that would enforce it.
Do you know, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because, I mean, in some ways you could argue that reform are being set up to fail, because if vast chunks of the civil service or local government, local councils just refuse outright, so we're not doing it, you know, what realistically can you do?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the problem we'll have down the line.
I mean, it's like Ronald Reagan. Do you remember when the air traffic controllers went on strike and he sacked them all and just got new air traffic controllers in? And it was just like, what are you going to do about it now? I mean, you can't do that with you know, sacking vast amounts of the civil service, because who's going to come in and replace them? Which is why you kind of hope that reform, as part of their preparations potentially for government, are actually thinking not just about who's going to be in government, but actually, if you like, the engine room behind it to have, you know, recruit enough people who are like-minded to want to make things happen.
Yeah. Well, speaking of like-minded, I also think this is it's an echo chamber problem, because I think what happens is people are not used to listening to somebody else's opinion. No. So if Farage comes to Leeds and speaks in the, you know, in a plaza somewhere, they could just go home, make a cup of tea, watch Coronation Street. Actually, probably they wouldn't watch Coronation Street, would they? But they could just not listen. But people can't tolerate that anymore. They can't tolerate somebody else speaking out loud if it disagrees with their opinion, because they're so used to looking at an app that just tells them exactly what they think over and over and over again.
They'll be going home to watch The Sewing Bee, I suspect.
Something on the BBC.
But it gets us back into this thing. Increasingly, we have this two-tier society. We were talking earlier about two-tier religious tolerance. You can argue that this is a form of two-tier freedom of speech, because if Zach Polanski was going to rock up in Leeds, leader of the Green Party, I suspect there'd be quite a lot of employees at Leeds City Council who go, hey, it's my boy Zach.
It'd be a parade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, OK, well, folks, you know, a big conversation lies ahead. Duncan, what a thrill to see you.
Always a pleasure.
And you're hosting on Friday, I understand.
I think so, yeah.
Friday evening. Now, you know what? Just let's say it and then it'll have to happen.
Yeah, Friday.
Right.
I'm here all day Friday.
What it is, and your lawyers will help you. That's a verbal contract.
Yes.
Book me in, then you can't cancel a guest, so I'll have to be there.
Let's get it. Let's spend the money now.
Always a pleasure.
Duncan Marks, thank you so much. The brilliant editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, is remaining with us. And a simple question at 23 minutes past 7 on a Saturday morning. Are public religious prayers un-British? Don't go anywhere.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So with his action in Iran, is Donald Trump proving himself to be John Wayne? Is he just dealing with the bad guys like in a Western? Well, Anne-Marie has messaged the show and says, good morning, Mark. If Trump is John Wayne, can he come and rescue the UK? Actually, I think it's about weakening China, who rely on Iran's oil. Interesting. Another unnamed texter. Good morning, Mark. Trump's ultimate aim is the Nobel Peace Prize and to stop the war in Ukraine. You can't stop Putin by chucking missiles at him, so Trump is lifting sanctions on Russia so its economy can go back to selling energy rather than building military hardware. With Iran out of the picture, makes it even harder for Putin to carry on with this war. Let's not forget, with Trump, it's all about the deal. What an intelligent, interesting and considered message. Keep them coming. Speaking of intelligent and considered, with me live in the studio, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Great to see you so early on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's fine. Used to it.
And there is sunshine pouring over the capital.
Shame we put the blinds down, isn't it?
A little bit. You can feel that spring is coming, can't you?
In the countryside where I live, there's daffodils everywhere. Do you have those in London anymore?
Not seen a daffodil,
so
I'm
as soon
afraid.
as you see one, you know it's spring.
No, Sadiq Khan has had them all...
concreted over.
Afraid so. Listen, can we talk about Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex? Because it appears there are figures in the Home Office who are seeking to thwart his efforts to have armed royal protection here in the UK. Why is Harry so focused on having royal protection when he's in Britain, given the fact that he goes to Ukraine, which is at war, he goes to China, which is a totalitarian dictatorship, he goes to Mexico, he goes to Africa, but for some reason when he's in Mayfair he needs cops.
Well, Meghan is obsessed with the fact that they're in danger. Her and her children are in danger. So Harry comes over and he's always said, I'll brave it on my own, but I would never put my wife and kids in danger. And I personally think she slightly holds it over him because she doesn't want to come over here because, well, she probably knows how the public would react if she came over. You know, she's not exactly the most popular person. But they have to come over next summer because the Invictus Games are coming over to Birmingham. So he's got to line this up in time for next summer. And I was told about 4 or 5 months ago that it was nailed on, this security. And the reason is because the police are saying, look, he really does have to have it because he has got real threats. There are real threats. They've seen the list. And apparently if you saw the list of threats against him, it would make your eyes bleed and you'd understand where he's coming from, according to his side of the argument. But the civil servants are now saying, it doesn't matter, it's a political hot potato. It would look dreadful to give him taxpayer security for the reasons you just said. He goes all over the world and he seems absolutely fine. And we certainly wouldn't want to pay for his security over in the States, given that he's shirking his duty. You know, and he gave up being a working royal.
To what extent, notwithstanding the pressure from Meghan, and, you know, you've got the best sources and I trust your every word when it comes to these royal scoops, what about Harry himself? Is there an element that he wants to have an entourage when he comes to the UK? Is it a flex having the armed cops? Does it remind him that he's the king's son? Is there an element of ego involved in this?
Oh, that's a very astute point. I think there probably is. I remember when he went to Clarence House last September to visit his dad, and he did suddenly have the fleet of Range Rovers with the little discreet blue lights. And I just thought, I do remember thinking, I bet he's absolutely loving this. And I don't think it's just about jumping the lights at traffic jams. I think you're right. I think he wants to be reminded of his former status. And what's happening in the US at the moment is that his status has completely dwindled to nothing. And even Netflix sources are saying they are, quote, done with Prince Harry. Yeah. So there's just nothing left over there. And I think you're right. I think having the security makes him feel like he's someone again.
And do you think that he will prevail? Because clearly within the Home Office, they're picking up, they're sensing the political backlash that will happen if he gets his armed royal security, because my viewers and listeners will have to pay for it. My viewers and listeners, no doubt your readers at the Mail on Sunday will take the view, well, this guy chose not to be a frontline serving royal, and if you're not a frontline serving royal, then you cease to have the royal protection. If I cease to work for Talk, I don't get a work pass that gets me in the building anymore.
Yeah, makes
consequences.
Sense. Yeah, I think the civil servants are right to pick up on the mood of the nation. I just wonder whether we would regret it if something happened to him, because he was unbelievably stupid and talked about how many people he'd killed in Afghanistan, which is entirely his fault. But let's not forget, and I'm not, you know, a defender of Prince Harry, but let's not forget his mother died in a car crash. He's completely paranoid. Meghan whips him up into further paranoia. And, you know, but I have been told by sources close to Harry that there is this list of people who are really out to get him, 2 of which I think have been to prison and have now been re-released. And one woman actually came close to him twice recently when he was in the UK.
An alleged stalker.
An alleged stalker.
Who at one point reportedly turned up at the High Court where he is currently suing your paper. Oh,
yes. Well, I didn't actually know that, but I know that she came close to him at a radio station.
Well, reportedly in the gallery.
Oh, wow. Well, exactly. That must have made him extremely paranoid, and he did indeed burst into tears in the witness box at the end and sort of rushed off in a huff. Yeah, when he went to the radio station, it fell to the security guard of the radio station to protect him from this woman. And then eventually his PR man came along, and he was army trained, and so he kind of protected Harry. But it is pretty basic levels of protection if that woman had a knife or something. And we might feel guilty, even though the nation is hardly a fan of Prince Harry these days, if something bad happened to him. He is Diana's son. I think he probably should have it.
Well,
I'm going to get slammed for saying that.
You and I are in agreement on that, and I am a master of unpopular opinions.
Okay.
It's my speciality. Because I am no fan of Harry. Like you've said, you're not a cheerleader for Harry, because I think he's been very hypocritical over the years and done untold damage to the royal family, arguably for money. But the threat to him, you don't need, and it's interesting, you know, your well-placed source has said there is a list as long as your arm of tangible threats, and I don't doubt that's true. But even if there weren't, the threat is implicit because he is the son of the King of the United Kingdom. Anyone that's the offspring of the sovereign of this country is under threat. You know, William is under threat, Catherine, Princess Anne. So it doesn't, him going to America or ceasing to be a frontline serving role doesn't stop him being King Charles's son.
No, exactly. And if
you've got a target on your head, sadly.
Yeah, if King Charles goes to visit Trump, whether that meeting goes ahead next month, may not. Who, you know, there may be many angry, you know, Iranians or associates of the Ayatollah out there who go, well, the king visits Trump's, then we're going to kill the whole of the king's family because the whole of the Ayatollah's family got killed.
Right.
You know, they could
an eye for an eye.
An eye for an eye could be going on. So I agree with you that he was born a prince. I always feel for the royals. I feel for little Prince George right now. It's the only celebrity that you're born into and you can never get out of. Harry's done a dismal job of trying to get out of being famous because he's pursued further fame and invaded his own privacy at every possible point. But he originally claimed he was trying to not be famous and well-known. And it is the one profession you can never really stop. You can't stop being a royal. You're born into it and it's the lot you're given. Which
is why it's my understanding that Harry is not very happy with the extent to which the spotlight is on their lives. It's my understanding that Harry was sold a pup by Meghan in the run-up to Megxit, that she's saying to him, listen, you know, you've been a celebrity since you were born, you crave a normal life, and we're going to go to North America, we're going to find a ranch in Canada, because let's not forget, Canada was the first, it wasn't going to be Montecito, was it? It wasn't going to be California. It was actually going to be
South Africa for a long time.
Well, there you go.
She said, let's move to South Africa, Harry, let's look at houses. And he was thrilled, because he was like, I'm going to go to South Africa. But then at the last minute, she changed her mind and said, no, it's LA, California for us.
Yes, via Canada, right? Which, of course, is a country she's got links with.
Yeah, she did briefly go there.
Although that was probably, was that an accommodation solution, going to Canada?
I think it was. And at the time, they were giving it all kind of, they were going to be in charge of the Commonwealth, and she was living in Canada, and it was going to be the perfect solution. But, of course, she always wanted to go to California.
I think she conned him. I think Megxit was a con. I think that she convinced him that they would have a normal life. And it's my understanding that Harry doesn't want to be famous, that he doesn't want Archie and Lily to be plastered all over Instagram, but what Meghan wants, Meghan gets.
I think that's exactly right. And I think he's starting to come to his senses. I just get the impression. For example, the Archie and Lily being on social media, she's trying to get them on social media and, you know, covering their faces with a little heart, but kind of showing quite a lot of their faces. And I would have thought by now Harry would have buckled, because what Meghan wants, what Meghan gets. But obviously he stood incredibly firm on this one point. I think it's the only time he's ever stood up for himself. He's not having those kids in the spotlight, no matter how close Meghan gets to almost revealing their faces and using them to sell her as ever products. So maybe back over there in Montecito, he's sticking up for himself.
Now, I have a lot of fun on YouTube clobbering poor old Prince Harry on a daily basis. I call him the world's least happy millionaire. You know, Prince Harry, but my terrible life growing up in palaces, yeah. So, you know, I've been an arch critic, but I do have some sympathy for the guy. If I look at his body language, Charlotte, just as a human being, yes, and, you know, people listening and watching, absolutely he's a hypocrite, and it was so churlish, that book, the Harry and Meghan documentary in which Meghan mocked Queen Elizabeth, and of course the outrageous allegations from the Oprah interview about racism to an unnamed member of the royal family, with a horrible finger being pointed at Princess Catherine, who in my view hasn't got a racist bone in her body. But so we got all of those provisos. He's still a human being, and just as a broad observer, I mean, he's not happy, is he? If I look at his body language, I don't think this is a happy man.
I totally agree. And speaking of body language, the Variety magazine, did you read that? Variety magazine did this massive expose of them this week. It was so brutal, and it said that every time he does make a bold move in a conversation, she grabs his arm and silences him, which they disputed, and they said that's a sort of misogynistic trope. But I just feel like he looks like he's not used to speaking up in a conversation or making his presence known, and he's become kind of introverted, and as you say, his shoulders sag, and he's lost the ability to have independent thought or speech.
She pets him when they go into a venue. She's guiding him, and it was very interesting that expose in Variety. And I think the reason why that had weight is because Variety is essentially a sort of very PR-led showbiz magazine. It doesn't really do anything hard-edged or cutting edge, does it?
It's not tabloid.
It's just puff pieces for celebrities. So for them to go after the Sussexes, I think, is pretty brutal, and that will have stung Meghan. That will have hurt.
Yeah, because it's very respected.
The Hollywood Bible takes her down. Because, and let's be honest, I think we can all agree, probably most of the journalists at Variety, they're probably pretty woke, pretty progressive, and therefore would naturally fall into the Sussex camp.
Yeah,
But
totally.
they've even lost that constituency. They've lost woke Hollywood.
I think once Ted, the boss of Netflix, slagged them off, then that's when Variety fell into line, because he's the real power. Meghan's not powerful compared to the boss of Netflix, let's face it.
Well, that's right. So Ted Sarandos, who's the boss of the streaming giant Netflix, is a clever, clever man. And it seemed like he was her lifeline at Netflix, because, of course, the ratings had been through the floor, critically panned, and it seemed like it was her friendship with Ted that was keeping it going. Well, what we got from this Variety expose, which has been denied by Netflix and the Sussexes, is that Ted Sarandos will now not take a call from Meghan unless there's a lawyer on the line.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes. And he's unfollowed her on social media. And they, throughout they have denied this thing about...
It's over.
They've denied that she pets him.
That's the nuclear button, isn't it?
Yeah,
the unfollow?
It really is. Because it's public, they can't deny that kind of thing. And they can't deny all the petting that you mentioned and say it's misogynistic, because there's video evidence. Wherever they go, you can see her clutching and touching him.
Clutching at straws, sounds like.
Quite literally.
Listen, we're delighted to have the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday with us in the studio, Charlotte Griffiths. So much more to come, more front pages. What do you think about this, folks? Is public prayer un-British? And Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor still calling himself HRH. You couldn't make it up. 7:40, Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:42. Labour's immigration betrayal. The Boris wave of immigrants may well be granted citizenship with a possible bill of £250 billion. That is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. You won't want to miss it. With me live in the studio, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. And Charlotte, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, Duke of York, is reportedly still calling himself HRH, His Royal Highness, as his belongings are moved into his final Sandringham exile home, which has been surrounded by an electric fence. What do you make of this? Does it surprise you that Andrew still considers himself to be a frontline royal?
It doesn't at all surprise me, because when he was dragged out of Royal Lodge in the middle of the night, apparently he was heard, it was reported, he was heard screaming, "You can't do this to me, I'm the Queen's second son." And, you know, the downfall of Andrew has always been his own opinion of himself, and he'll never stop using that title in private. He's just like Meghan. Do you remember Meghan used to sign her cards off HRH long after she moved to Montecito and stopped being a worker?
Even though she promised the Queen she wouldn't.
Even though she promised the Queen she wouldn't. She did it in private. You could never imagine Catherine sending a note to her friend from, I don't know, Marlborough, a note with HRH written on it. She just would never do that. Yet Meghan was doing that to her private friends. And it looks like Andrew must have told his staff, please label my boxes HRH, or that they're so used to calling him HRH, they've forgotten to write AMW. Andrew, yes. Yeah, it was quite early in the morning. You know, so they should be writing AMW on all those boxes, not HRH.
Yes, indeed. Now, there are further investigations around Andrew. Originally, we had that possible charge of misconduct in a public office, and he was arrested, of course, in what became a global news story. And I was here in this building when it happened, and literally the stops clocked. It was just quite a moment. In fact, I heard a shriek from the office when I was in the studio when that broke. But it looks like the scope of that inquiry may go beyond the allegation of misconduct in a public office into potential corruption charges and also allegations related to the trafficking of a child for sex. So, as Andrew Lowney, good friend of ours, of course, the author of Downfall, which was the beginning of the end for Prince Andrew last year, you know, Andrew Lowney has said there's worse to come for Andrew, and you have to fear he's right.
I remember reading that book long before this all kicked off. Actually, not that long, actually, just at the right time. And you could tell in the subtext, reading between the lines of that book, that there is so much more he didn't dare write. And I interviewed him just after the book came out, and he said that lots of his sources that he approached wouldn't speak to him for that book. Lots of obviously very good ones did. And as soon as they read the book, lots more came out of the woodwork and started saying, well, now I've read your book, I will tell you the real truth for his next book. I'm sure he was just kind of plugging his next book. But I also think that does often happen once the floodgates open. People say, I'm not going to harbour secrets for this man anymore. He's clearly a bad egg. And clearly, you know, once you've lost that power and influence, people don't sort of feel the need to be loyal to you anymore, I'm afraid. People out there are not always, you know, good people when it comes to that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot more to come.
We saw that with the disgraced Hollywood executive Harvey Weinstein after his awful crimes. And at that point, all of the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements that people had signed became null and void, and it was all hell broke loose, wasn't it? And I think that's going to happen with Andrew as well. What kind of a human being is Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor? How can the Queen's reportedly favourite son fall so dramatically from grace? This was a guy who was known as Randy Andy. He was an avuncular figure in the 80s. The most attractive member of the royal family, a good-looking guy.
I just refuse to believe that. I just can't believe it.
Well, I find him a complete hottie. I've got to say, I find it a dreamboat. Early Andrew, yes, please. Oh. No, I'm joking. But I mean, he was okay. So, but he was certainly less odd-looking than the others. You know,
he was regarded as handsome.
Actually, one of the few positive books of Andrew Lowney's book, it was elements of Andrew Lowney's book, was that actually his military colleagues haven't got a bad word to say about him, and that he was quite brave in the Falklands. So you got all that. What went wrong?
Well, I have to say, leaving the military, I think, was what went wrong, and for Prince Harry as well, because there are certain members of the royal family that need intense structure around them, I think, and they do have the capacity to be quite brave. And I think he and Prince Harry are probably quite brave, good soldiers, you know, good at being in the Navy. And once you take that away from them, they don't have a job, they don't have a purpose. They've got sort of access to lots of money and wealth, but actually don't really have a large amount of money coming into their account. And that's
they can't just go and buy a Lambo, can they? They
can't, no. Do you remember when Harry met Meghan? She was appalled by how poor he was, ironically, even though he was living in Kensington Palace. And I remember Cressida Bonus used to say how stingy Prince Harry was. And it's just because they just don't have any money. So I think, what kind of person are they? I think they're kind of brave, but incredibly foolish and lacking in discipline. And so I think any future royals, those kind of Wales children, I think should stay in the army, you know, until their retirement, essentially, to keep them safe.
Yeah, because you're not a spare in the military, are you? But in Civvy Street you are, and that's obviously what happened to both men. It is, in some ways, Andrew and Harry, the curse of the spare.
Absolutely, and Harry always used to say, in the military you're just the same as everybody else, which means you're not higher or lower than anyone else, and that's what they need, this kind of, the feeling of just being a normal guy, basically. So
we have the scope of the police investigation into Andrew widening, which I think is a massive headache for not just him, but the King. And of course, it's the King that is providing this accommodation at Sandringham, which is a privately owned royal estate. But there's still a perception it's public money because You know, to what extent, you know, that the wealth that the royal family have, in a sense, it is, you know, has been gifted and bestowed upon them over centuries, hasn't it? So is that a difficult sell for Andrew to live rent-free on private royal estate for the rest of his life, given the allegations he faces?
Well, I think Charles had to say, I'm going to have to look after this man, otherwise what will he do? He'll go off chasing money. That's what Sarah Ferguson's apparently doing. She's hustling behind the scenes, trying to find some money from somewhere to live her lifestyle, because the king has obviously cut her off completely and she doesn't have anywhere to live. So I think the king just thought, better to spend not that much money. I mean, relative to our lifestyles, a 6-bedroom house is probably pretty nice, but relative to Royal Lodge, he's put him in a small house.
Is it Marsh Farm?
Marsh Farm. I think it's quite interesting that he has moved out of Wood Farm. So that was Prince Philip's cottage where he has been living, because Marsh Farm wasn't ready. Apparently when Andrew got there, he said, I'm not moving, I'm staying here forever. And I thought that would actually happen. I thought he'd stand firm. But obviously the king has been bold enough to evict him a second time from Wood Farm into Marsh Farm. But I think it's good, it's money well spent, because it contains this preposterous man and keeps him safe and keeps him away from everybody else, from you and me, from the rest of the general public. I'm glad they put new security fences all around it so we don't have to see him accepting his Waitrose deliveries in his dressing gown, which apparently he's been doing, and, you know, swanning around. And he's very he sort of sits around doing nothing all day, so he's quite easy to contain if you give him a house. Apparently he just sits there watching TV. He obviously doesn't go riding anymore, he's been banned from that. He's quite happy doing very little. He's essentially quite a lazy man. So I say spend the money and keep him away from the rest of us.
Charlotte Griffiths is not lazy. Will you come back and see us soon?
Yeah, I'm coming next weekend, I think.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I am counting my blessings. Charlotte Griffiths is the editor-at-large and the Mail on Sunday, which is massive for royal scoops, political scoops, economy, showbiz, you name it. Charlotte, thank you so much. Have an excellent Saturday. Are you happy to pay your taxes to provide security for Prince Harry? This is Talk Breakfast 7:50.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:53 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. As you know, I specialise in unfashionable opinions, and I'm just wondering whether this war in Iran is a moral war, a noble war. Trump's got nothing to gain. It's putting inflation up in America. It's costing money. His MAGA base hate it. So is he just John Wayne in a cowboy movie, just dealing with those nasty Mexicans? Is this a moral war? Here's a voice note from lovely Anne.
Good morning, Mark. Anna, sorry. I think you're very naive about the situation with Iran and Trump and Starman. Your guests seem to think that Trump just wanders around in his dressing gown, making decisions alone. America's military leaders they're cold as ice. They're sharks. They know exactly what they're doing. Trump and his team, they're deliberately destabilising Starmer, and they're doing it slowly. Death by 1,000 cuts until Farage is ready to walk into office.
Well, how interesting, Anne. I really appreciate your thoughts on that, and very, very interesting theory that you think this is a strategy to help Farage and to destabilise Starmer, which it may well be. What about this? Here's Boz on our current Labour government. Take a listen.
Morning, Mark. Travelling Boz here. Seriously, this government is going to bankrupt this country. Absolutely. Nil, zero, whatever it's called, on energy. Costing this, blaming this and that. They are absolutely rubbish at finances. How is that Reeve still the Chancellor? She's destroyed everything in 20 months.
Yeah.
Starmer, well, he's just a clown anyway. All of them are clowns, all right? You'd rather go to a circus, and even if they were performing at a circus, you wouldn't go and see them because they're absolutely crap at what they do.
Boz, I cannot disagree with you. Great voice note. And what about this, folks? More Muslim prayer. This time, 30,000 Muslims for Eid in a Birmingham park. Mass outdoor prayer to mark the end of Ramadan. Is public Muslim prayer un-British? Here is Helen.
Morning, Helen in Knutsford here. Of course public praying is un-British. We don't do it, do we? We don't do it. And so why is anyone doing it? Why don't you ask them why they're doing it?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Helen. I'm going to annoy the heck out of a few people because we're going to pray later. You heard me right. It's a Christian country. This is a Christian country. So we've got a vicar on. We've got a cleric. We've got a reverend. The very reverend. He's the most reverend. And we will pray to our Christian God on this show before 10. How about that? We've got a call now, and it's a good friend of mine, David in Birmingham. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mark. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. I would imagine the sun is glossing itself over England's second city this morning.
I think it probably is, to be fair.
Now, what do you mean, probably?
Well, I'm just looking out of the window, and it's very sort of misty, hazy. You know what I mean?
So what you need, David, another hour for the sun to burn through that mist?
It usually takes about that time. It's always like this first thing in the morning in Birmingham, unfortunately. But, yeah, it's brightening up.
Well, I love Birmingham. I think it's a beautiful city, great people. It's changed a lot in a manner that no one voted for. But overall, I still think there's great culture there, great hospitality, and also plenty of business as well. It's an economic hub, isn't it, Birmingham?
It is. It's always been a bit of a black hole in terms of success. And there's always been a rivalry with Manchester, which is interesting, you know, for the status of being the second city and all that, yeah?
Well, of course, Manchester had the advantage of being the capital of the Industrial Revolution, didn't it? Now, David, my apologies for taking you off piste, although very interesting conversation. Birmingham versus Manchester, let me know your thoughts. But what about Prince Harry? Because I know that's why you've called. He wants taxpayer-funded armed security when he's in the UK. Are you happy to pay your taxes for that?
No. If I had any hair, I would be tearing it out now because I was listening to your two guests earlier. This security issue, he's a non-working royal. And that was his choice, okay? Now, I've known a lot of ex-forces personnel, including my grandfather, and I was always asking him stupid questions like, how many people did you kill in the First World War?
Yeah.
And they don't talk about it.
Nope.
You know, you never talk about the kill count. It's the last thing that they do. It's an unwritten code. So to me, to release his kill count was a cynical move to try and retain his royal security status.
Wow, on purpose. So he's exposed himself to danger in the book in order to get the armed cops?
Yes, absolutely. So I've got no sympathy for the bloke. I think he's spoiled and frankly his stick is too short, you know, and I don't think anybody's interested. You know, I really don't. It's insulting, really, because he doesn't even live here. You know?
David, listen, I could talk to you all morning. What a brilliant call. David thinks that Harry exposed himself to military secrets in his book in order to force the Home Office to take care of his security. More of this to come. Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Past 8, top of the morning. Happy Saturday, one and all. Mark Dolan with you for Talk Breakfast. A very big show coming up, and breaking this morning, the special relationship in tatters as a furious Donald Trump blasts Keir Starmer for Britain's, and I quote, very late response as the PM finally allows America to use British bases to strike Iran. Meanwhile, Labour's immigration betrayal as the left wing of the party, led by the ginger growler herself, Angela Rayner, seek yet another U-turn to give 3 million Boris Wave immigrants indefinite leave to remain. Now, this is a move that could cost the country £250 billion. Yes, not billion, trillion. You heard it right. It's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. You won't want to miss it. It might get me cancelled. Good, cancel me. I can't be cancelled because I've got you behind me. And yet another religious display from the British Muslim community as 30,000 worshippers, you heard me right, 30,000 worshippers descend in a park in Birmingham. So is public Muslim prayer un-British? And why the deafening silence from the Church of England, given that this is supposedly a Christian country? We're going to be speaking to a top cleric later, and we will be having a moment of Christian prayer. Is that allowed? We'll find out, won't we? Meanwhile, the Home Office tried to block Prince Harry's request for expensive taxpayer-funded security. And how about this? You will love this story at 8:05. A woke council in West Yorkshire is offering its staff therapy and safe spaces because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. That's right, they need therapy. They need counselling because the man who's probably going to be our next Prime Minister is visiting them. What happens when Reform win the election and become the next government? They're just going to be meltdown, isn't there? Now, my priority for the next 2 hours is to get your opinions on the radio and on the telly, because you can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online. The very DNA of the Talk brand is in radio, but it's now a TV show as well. You can see all my amazing guests. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. You can watch Dolan's Dispatch. It might get me cancelled. Good! My phone number is 03444991000. The brilliant Sholopay is taking your calls. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Is public Muslim prayer un-British? Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Lovely to have your company on a Saturday morning. The sun is shining. Your weekend starts here. We've got serious stuff to talk about, but we're going to have some fun as well. Comic relief. Did you watch that last night? What a disaster. Oh, my God. It was about as funny as a fire in an orphanage. I've got to say, I was shocked at how dismal it was. They don't even use comedians anymore. It's Davina McCall. She's not even a comedian. She's a nice lady who's always on a diet. Fine, good luck to her. I can see her rib cage from here. But she's not a comedian. Anyway, they raised a bit of money, but it turns out a lot of those comic relief causes are to do with illegal immigration and making sure that we have more boat crossings, not fewer. I'll get reaction from the brilliant comedian Leo Kearse later this hour. Front pages. The Sun newspaper, an expose about Prince Edward. Prince Ed Wad, as it's revealed that Edward and Sophie have been pulling in 130 grand a year, subletting a royal stable block. Truth is, that's our money, isn't it? They shouldn't be profiting from royal property because it's ours. The Guardian newspaper, Trump brands NATO cowards over the war. And the Times newspaper, PM agrees Trump can use bases to strike Iran. Well, let's get reaction to all of the big stories in the company of one of the most experienced politicians in the country and now elite-level political commentator, Sir Michael Fabricant. Good morning, Sir Michael.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. First night of the realm, so I shall fall to my knees.
Of course.
And when we
I was rather amazed you were throwing cups. People who weren't watching this but just hearing on the radio wasn't aware that, in fact, you were throwing cups at the camera earlier on. And I understand your outrage, and quite rightly so.
Well, we'll come to that because there is a council in Leeds, right? Beautiful, beautiful city. I've got so many viewers and listeners in Leeds, in the West Yorkshire. And they're having therapy because Farage is visiting the city. We'll come to that, Sir Michael, but I really want to talk to you about the Prime Minister and the US President Donald Trump and a special relationship in ruins. It strikes me, Sir Michael, that old Starmer has pleased no one because at the beginning of the war, he precluded US access to UK air bases just to refuel the jets. Now he's supporting America, which means those against the war are unhappy. This guy is sitting on the fence and winning no friends.
That's right. He's dithered all along. And now we hear that 2 rockets were fired by the Iranians at Diego Garcia. They didn't actually hit Diego Garcia. I think they ended up in the sea. But this was Iran saying, well, you're saying, Keir Starmer, that this is for defence only, but it makes no difference to us. And they will continue. And don't forget, it wasn't that long ago, even when Keir Starmer was saying that he's not going to get involved in the war whatsoever, that they fired rockets in Cyprus at the 2 British Army bases there, or RAF bases at Akrotiri and the other base further east of Akrotiri. No, he's pleased absolutely no one, least of all our strongest ally, Donald Trump, because he dithers. And let's be clear about this. Donald Trump wasn't, as some people tried to make out, asking that we take part in the war, like when the United States, I think it was President Johnson, asked Harold Wilson to take part in the Vietnam War. No, all he wanted was permission to refuel jets at British RAF bases on Diego Garcia and at Fairford in Gloucestershire. Well, we are doing that now. In fact, we did that 2 days after Trump said, Keir Starmer said, you can't do it. It's this flip-flop U-turn dither, which is absolutely typical of the way that Keir Starmer is trying to run this country. And he is running it, but into the ground.
And Iran, as you say, target Diego Garcia, which is part of the Chagos Islands, sovereign British territory, militarily, strategically significant, which the Prime Minister is trying to give away.
And he's not just giving it away. He's actually doing it by saying, I'm going to pay Mauritius, which incidentally, the Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands were never a part of Mauritius. So why Mauritius? It's
no historic claim on that territory whatsoever.
No, and more to the point, we're going to spend £39 billion of your money and mine, taxpayers' money, for the privilege of actually giving this away to, and the Chagos Islanders don't want that. Of course, the Chagos Islanders, quite understandably, would like to go back to the Chagos Islands, and I think we should let them. And in fact, a few Chagos Islanders actually landed on Diego Garcia and some of the islands not so long ago, and we should be supporting them. And you know what? They were flying the flag of the Chagos Islands, the British, what's it called? The British Indian Ocean Territories,
right,
which of course has got the Union Jack in the top left-hand corner. You know, I think it's an absolute disgrace. And this is just typical of Starmer, who can't see the wood for the trees. He argues minute points of law, which other attorneys general have said are completely irrelevant. And look where it's got us. As I said, rockets being fired at Diego Garcia and other bases, and we're involved in the war against Iran, whether we like it or not.
And indeed, just to pick up on that, there are people supportive of what's happening in Iran because it's a wicked regime, arguably the worst regime since the Third Reich, the biggest sponsor of terror in the world, potentially days or weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon. So you can't really defend the Iranian regime. But whether or not you support Trump's war and Israel's war or not, it's crystal clear that the Strait of Hormuz must be liberated, because this is a stretch of water that carries 20% of the world's oil, which is why it's so important for our economy and for our viewers and listeners this morning.
And that's right. And of course, I can understand why Donald Trump is so angry about the fact that the Royal Navy, under instruction from Keir Starmer, are not going to that area. And also our allies, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and so on, who buy a lot of weapons from the British and are supposed to be protected by treaty by the British, are very, very disappointed by the fact that Britain is not getting involved at all. We're getting none of the gain, but we are getting all of the pain.
You can love or hate the war, but you must defend the Strait of Hormuz. This is a thoroughfare that has implications for the world economy.
That's right. And I would add another thing as well about Iran. I'm in Lichfield at the moment, which is not far from the National Memorial Arboretum. And Mark, you must visit it. It's an amazing place. But there are memorials there to people who have been killed since the Second World War in our armed services and other people working with the armed forces. Many of them were killed in Afghanistan and Iraq by IEDs. These are explosive devices which were either made in Iran or had people trained in Iran to work against the British. So Iran has actively worked against us. And of course, only the other day we find out that 2 Iranians were trying to break into Faz Lane, which is where the nuclear deterrent, our British nuclear deterrent, is kept. These are no friends of ours. And for those who say there is no plan at all whatsoever about what the Israelis and the Americans are up to, are really not following closely enough. You know, one of the things in Britain, and it happens elsewhere as well, is journalists follow what other journalists say and repeat it.
Yeah.
But what you need to do occasionally is actually read what is going on actually in the United States and Israel. And their war aims are very, very clear. It's not just destroying their nuclear capability. And let's be clear about this, by the way. If you are going to have a peaceful nuclear power station, you want uranium enriched to about 3 or 5%. If you want a dirty bomb, a dirty nuclear bomb, it needs to be enriched to 60%.
Yep.
And the Iranians already have that by their own admission. And if you want an atomic bomb, which is slightly different, that has to be 90%. And it's a lot easier to get from 60 to 90% than it was to get from 0% up to 60%. So there's a real danger there. And there is a very clear war aim. So not just to get rid of the nuclear threat, but also regime change. And things are beginning to happen. I mean, the Israelis have got pinpoint accuracy in the way their missiles are now striking individual police stations of the Basij. The Basij are like the territorial army of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're the real hardline swines who have been killing 40,000 people, some people said, were killed in January who were demonstrating. Now, if they can be disarmed slowly and systematically, and the Israelis, because it is the Israelis who have human intelligence based in Iran, can actually provide weapons to the ordinary people, and the army, the Artesh is the army. And the regular Iranian army are no fans of the Ayatollah. They just do as they're told. They're enlisted men. They're not the extremists. If they could rise up against the Ayatollahs, you'll end up with a decent regime in Iran, and a regime which is not so evil as this Muslims extremists.
Well, I want your help with this because many on the right have deserted Donald Trump and think that this war in Iran has been a major strategic mistake. But I'm just looking at incentives here, Sir Michael, and it strikes me that Donald Trump has nothing to gain from this war in Iran. It's very inflationary, so it's going to increase the cost of living for Americans. The MAGA base aren't happy. They were promised no foreign wars. It's going to cost cash because Congress have already been asked for another, the Pentagon looking for $200 billion just to keep the war effort going. So with no skin in the game, with no political advantage achieved, it strikes me that Donald Trump is doing this because it's the right thing to do. This is a noble war.
Yeah, and he's also right, Donald Trump, when he says, look, when the war is over, things will return to normal.
They'll be better.
Fairly. Pardon?
They'll be better, won't they?
They will be a lot
Because you
better,
won't have this wicked regime that's got its whip hand over the Middle East.
That's right. And let's not also forget that the reason why there was the October 7th attack by Hamas on a completely peaceful pop festival that was going on in the Negev desert in Israel, and various villages and towns that were attacked, was because Israel was about to sign a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. And the Iranians didn't want that, so they provoked the war in Gaza. And of course, Hamas is completely operated. It's a tool of the Iranian regime, as is Hezbollah in the Lebanon, and as are the Houthis, by the way, who've been firing rockets from time to time, not only at Israel, but also at the Americans, and also shipping in the Gulf of Hormuz, or the Straits of Hormuz. So, you know, it is a wicked regime, and money will be saved in any event if you had a normal regime. I'm not saying Saudi Arabia is that marvellous, you know, although they're getting more modernised. But,
it's a Western ally, isn't it?
It's a Western ally, and in a way, from a moral point of view, it doesn't kill its own people. Yes, we've heard that on occasion there is the odd execution, which nobody condones at all.
And women can't drive, which I think is not too
bad. Well, they've
bad.
changed that. I believe that's now being changed. They are allowing it. The new Crown Prince has allowed that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, he's gone.
But certainly they don't
You should see Mrs. Dolan's parking.
Yeah, they don't mass execute 40,000 people, as what happened in January.
No, you're absolutely right. So, Michael, therefore, I mean, I'm just going to characterise this in a very simple way, but it strikes me that Donald Trump has a moral purpose here, because with no political advantage, no economic advantage, I think he just thinks that he's John Wayne and that this is a cowboy movie. It's a spaghetti western, and Iran are the evil Mexicans that have to be dealt with. I mean, I hate to put it in such binary terms, but I think this is a moral judgment that Donald Trump has made.
I think that's right. And I would go further. You know, it's quite sort of accepted in Britain that Trump is a fool. Far from it. Far from it. Now, he does say amazing things in press conferences. I mean, it was an incredible thing that happened the other day when the Japanese Prime Minister was with him. I don't know whether you've covered that. There was the Japanese visit to America. And
he teased the Prime Minister about Pearl Harbor. He said, oh, you guys know all about surprises, right?
That's right. He said, you know all about surprises. That's how you got us in Pearl Harbor. And I thought, well, talk about politically incorrect. But the key thing is that he has a very clear global vision. You know, one of the reasons for taking out Maduro in Venezuela was to stop oil getting to Cuba. And he's now got an oil blockade on Cuba. Cuba and America are currently in secret or fairly secret negotiations. We could see regime change in Cuba, with Cuba being restored to being a normal country in the Caribbean, which I can tell you, having been to Cuba, would certainly benefit the poor people of Cuba who live in abject poverty because of the Castro regime. No, he's got a much broader vision than people give him credit for. And, you know, Trump is someone in some ways we should admire. Of course, he says odd things at times in press conferences. He loves his press conferences because Biden was absolutely terrified. Biden, of course, was Trump's predecessor. He was terrified of ever appearing before the press because he couldn't answer questions. The poor man was already in the early stages, some would say advanced stages, of dementia. But Trump loves these press conferences, and he does say things from time to time which are absolutely wild. But this shouldn't disguise the fact that he has an overall plan. And that overall plan, I believe, is for the benefit of the West and for the United Kingdom at this time to be antagonizing Trump unnecessarily, because we only reversed the decision 2 days later not to allow the Americans to use our bases, was stupidity in the extreme. But then that's Keir Starmer, and Keir Starmer and stupidity, well, you know what? Those things go together.
You say tomato, I say tomato. Sir Michael, I'm delighted to say that you're staying with us. One of the most experienced politicians in the country and now elite-level political commentator, Sir Michael Fabricant, who's going to stay with us. And I've got a couple of very big stories for you. Eid brings 30,000 Muslims to a Birmingham park in a mass outdoor prayer to mark the end of Ramadan. Is public Muslim prayer un-British? Plus, Labour's Boris wave immigration U-turn. This is a shocker. It could cost you and I £250 billion. You heard me right. That's next.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
The voice of common sense, indeed. This is Talk. Lovely to have your company. Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. Labour's immigration betrayal. Well, let's raise this subject with Sir Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP and now political broadcaster. Sir Michael, lovely to have you on the show. One of the very positive policies of this current Labour administration came from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who doubled the length of time that you have to wait to receive indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10 years, with some excellent terms and conditions, including excellent command of the English language. You need an income and you need to not have a criminal record. So this was a great move from this Labour government. I'll always give credit where it's due. Unfortunately, it looks like it's not going to happen because of pressure from left-wing MPs and one Angela Rayner.
That's right. I mean, Shabana Mahmood has been a breath of fresh air, actually, in her approach. But I actually wondered from the very beginning whether she would ever see it come through. We've had so many rebellions on the Labour side, on welfare and so many other issues. Yeah. I wondered whether there would be a rebellion.
Too good to be true, Michael. Too good to be true.
Too good to be true. And of course, Angela Rayner is very much after the Prime Ministership of the United Kingdom. Can you imagine? And I've made a prediction on your show, and I'll repeat it after the May elections, because they've just been waiting not to have any particular disturbance, waiting until the May elections are over. At the beginning of May, the local elections, there will be a challenge, I think, on Keir Starmer. I think Keir Starmer always was a dud. That was the word I used many, many months ago when he was quite popular, well, fairly popular after the general election. But you know what? Angela Rayner is going to rebel against this. So are the vast majority of Labour backbenchers. It'll be very interesting, by the way, to see what the Conservative Party does, because will they support the Labour Party and say, you know what, Shabana Mahmood, what she's doing is right, and will they support her? Or will, in fact, Keir Starmer just cave in and the whole policy just collapse without going to a vote? That'll be an interesting thing to see.
Well, it breaks my heart. I think it's devastating because I believe this is actually a financial Ponzi scheme for the country and for my viewers and listeners, Sir Michael, because let me just quote you this figure, because it's very important that I get this across, just how costly this Boris Wave U-turn could be. You're looking at something in the region of £250 billion that will be payable over the lifetime of these people granted indefinite leave to remain. Michael, nothing wrong with these folk. They're trying to have a better life here, but they're going to be low-skilled workers, therefore dependent on in-work benefits for the rest of their lives, not to mention cheaper housing, NHS, school places. And many of those people will also be unemployed and fully dependent on the state. So this is a massive, gigantic mortgage on the future of the country.
That's absolutely right. But there's another more serious issue. Many of them are coming from developing countries. That's why they want to come here in the first place. And as you say, there's always been economic migration. But the question with these people are, will they integrate? Many of them are going to be Muslim, and, you know, I've got many Muslim friends who are very decent people, but the ones who are religious really believe very, very much in the literal meaning of the Quran, which talks about no tolerance for other religions, and really brings us back to what you were talking about earlier, which is this massive demonstration in a city not far from Lichfield, Birmingham, by Muslims with how many people was it in public?
30,000. 30,000.
30,000 people. You don't get Jewish people doing that. You don't get Hindus doing that. You certainly don't get Roman Catholics or Anglicans doing that.
More's the pity.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I actually think religion should be a private thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be a public thing. If you want to go to a mosque, fine. If you want to go to a synagogue, a shul, that's fine. If you want to go to church. I went to Evensong last night. You know what? I don't really believe in the literal thing about Jesus being Son of God, but I love the music. And Evensong is a free concert and a rather spiritual thing at Lichfield Cathedral, and that was lovely. But you know what? We don't do it in a public place. And that's how it should be. And I think 30,000 people gathering in Birmingham, you know, is really making a statement, rather like flying a Palestinian flag, which is, we believe in the caliphate. We believe in changing a country to our way of thinking, instead of being tolerant and instead of adapting to the mores of the country you've moved to. That's the worry about all these people coming here and staying here.
Nick Timothy is the Conservative MP and Shadow Justice Secretary who's sparked this debate with a post on X, Sir Michael, criticising this public display of Muslim faith at Trafalgar Square. I think in the region of 3,000 people, mostly men, by the way, with the women at the back. Not a squeak from the progressive left or the feminists about that, because they've got selective moral blindness. But do you know Nick Timothy? He was, of course, one of the key advisors to Theresa May during her administration. Do you know Nick Timothy, and what's your view of his intervention?
Well, I think he's saying what was previously unsayable because of the woke era in which we live. And I do know Nick Timothy. Nick Timothy was an advisor before he was an advisor to Theresa May, to a good friend of mine, Andy Street. Now, Andy Street was the mayor of the West Midlands. Now, he and I don't always agree, actually, on some of these issues. You should get Andy Street on.
Well, we love Andy, but he's terribly left-wing. That's the problem.
Well, I wouldn't say he's left-wing, but he is terribly woke.
He's been struck with the woke mind virus, to which there's no cure. But he's a lovely man.
I'll tell you a story.
Let me tell you, he was a great boss of John Lewis, and also he was a great Midlands mayor.
He was.
Give me your story. Give me your story.
But I will tell you a story. I remember once taking part in one of the many votes we have in the House of Commons. And during the vote, you know, we all collect in the same big room, the aye lobby or the no lobby. And the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, came running up to me, rubbing his hands, you know, as Rishi is a very enthusiastic person. And I think he just had a row with Andy Street. And he says to me, "You've got to tell me your secret, Michael." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Why are you and Andy such great friends?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you don't agree on anything. You don't agree on HS2 because Andy was pro-HS2. I wasn't. You don't agree on Brexit because I was always a leaver and he was a remain, and he went through so many other lists. I mean, the reason why we're great friends is because we like the same sort of hobbies, you know, travelling and walking and this sort of thing." But, yeah, but Nick Timothy, back to him, worked with Andy Street, and I think Nick Timothy has seen the light. I think he has seen what was going on in Birmingham. And Nick Timothy is absolutely right to call this sort of thing out. And I wouldn't say, oh, it's wrong to have mass Muslim prayer. So I just don't think it's right to have any religious prayer where you're imposing it on other people.
I think that's a great landing place. Michael, we could happily have you for the 4 hours because you have the energy, the intellect, the experience and the wisdom. It was so brilliant to see you. We really look forward to your return. Have an excellent Saturday, Sir Michael, and all the very best to you. Thank you for a great contribution to the show. Well, is public Muslim prayer un-British? And is it against the values and culture of this country? I'll be asking a leading cleric next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:36 Talk Breakfast. Dolan's Dispatch. Labour's Boris Wave immigration betrayal. That is Dolan's Dispatch in half an hour's time. I would urge you not to miss it. But at 8:36 on a Saturday morning, is Muslim public prayer un-British? Is it a threat to the culture of this country? Let's get the views of Bishop Kyrian H. Dewar, FSHC. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Lovely to see you so early on a Saturday morning.
Well, listen, it's always a treat and a great blessing to have you on the programme. What did you make of those pictures from Trafalgar Square earlier this week of upwards of 3,000, mostly men, worshipping to Allah as the only God in our capital city?
I have to be honest, as we have seen it over the last few years, I'm not unaccustomed to it. However, I have serious concerns at any point that the Adhan is prayed in a public arena in the way in which it has been, because it's not just limited to this event in Trafalgar Square. We're seeing this all across the country pouring into our streets on a weekly basis. Now, Nick Timothy was very right to point out that this is a play straight out of the Islamist playbook. And we've consistently had, you know, the government and other organizations ramming down our throat about Christians and others and even members of the public that are not religious are not allowed to perform acts that have optics or connections to what they deem as far right. Well, why does the same standard not apply to a mass prayer gathering which has the use of the prayer and the fashion in which it's used has direct links to Islamic fundamentalism? That is what I'm concerned about. I still support the freedom of religion in the United Kingdom. I don't think that just because we're a Christian country, we should prevent others from being able to worship as they choose in their faith. What I do concern myself with is the fact that this Adhan prayer is unlike every other prayer that we see in a mass gathering. When we pray the Nicene Creed in a mass public gathering or the Lord's Prayer, what do we pray? We talk about our Father. I believe it does not begin, there is no God but Allah and Muhammad as his prophet. And then after that, our teachings, unlike the Islamic teachings, do not then encourage our adherents to murder people, to rape people, to subjugate infidels. Christianity, and at its core, Judaism, Sikhism, Buddhism, religions based around peace, not warfare and suppression through violence. So my concern wasn't necessarily what took place in Trafalgar Square. My concern is what it is linked to, what it represents, and what it is leading to, which, as we're seeing all across the United Kingdom, and there's no other word to put it, is the Islamification of Great Britain. That, to me, is not acceptable. We are constitutionally a Christian country. We have a Christian monarch. We have had a Christian monarch for 1,000 years, and that is why, based on this and other events that took place over the last weekend, I wrote to the King at the beginning of this week demanding that he actually stand up and honor the oath he made as defender of the faith.
The Muslim faith, Islam as a religion, Reverend, is it illiberal, violent and imperious because of its interpretation or its core scriptures?
I believe it is both, because the core scriptures actually advocate for violence against the infidels. They advocate for the raping of women. They advocate for the beating of a husband's wife. It's violent at its very core. Let's look at it in perspective. Muhammad, the prophet, doesn't start out as a violent man. He goes to what we now know as Israel and tries to set himself up as a prophet in the same way in which the prophets of Israel had set themselves up in centuries past. And the Jews and the Christians reject him. He returns then as a warlord and massacres them all. That's not an indication of the religion of peace to me. You don't create peace through violence. We're seeing that right now playing out with what's happening in Iran. We've seen it playing out in Israel with the October 7th attacks and what's happened on both sides of the political divide there and the theological divide ever since. Peace is not established through warfare. It's not established through violence. And we have an inconsistency. Islam is not just incompatible with Western civilization. Islam is incompatible with Islam, because there are too many factions within the religion itself that are killing other Muslims on the basis that they're not hardcore adherents to that 7th century Islam and not pushing for global Sharia and a global caliphate and either the mass murder or mass subjugation and conversion of everybody else in the world. So we cannot just ignore all of these things. And as much as the majority of Muslims are what we call moderate Muslims now, unless they actually begin to publicly denounce the Islamic fundamentalism, which goes against what the Quran teaches and is why they never do it, then we're never going to have this balance. You cannot divorce one section of a fundamentalist faith from every other section if those other sections refuse to condemn and distance themselves from the fundamentalism within their own religion.
Reverend, if Islam is incompatible with Western culture, how are millions of Muslims able to live so successfully in this country, starting businesses, colleagues, friends, neighbours, sometimes lovers?
Because they keep to that moderate Muslim view. Mark, I know hundreds and hundreds of Muslims. They are truly wonderful people. And almost all of them do not ascribe to this 7th century barbarism that we see playing out that we now call religious Islamic fundamentalism. The problem is that they come here to the United Kingdom, they go to the United States, they come to Western Europe, and most of them assimilate into the culture, assimilate into the host nation. It is those numbers amongst them that go to another country from where they're all born into another country because a family lives there, that then adhere to that 7th century barbaric form of fundamentalist Islam that wants to murder everybody and convert the whole
world. But are moderate Muslims complicit? Are they deafening in their silence? Is this on them?
I believe in part it is. And I don't say that to be condemning of them. But as I said earlier on, if you refuse to condemn the extremism, listen, I'm not blind. I'm not stupid. We have really fundamentalist components within Christianity. You've got lunatics in Texas that hold services where they walk around parading with poisonous vipers because the scripture says you shall take up snakes and they won't poison you. That is absolute lunacy. I condemn that in the strongest possible terms. That is just mental to me. Christianity is not about that. But when you don't speak up and say, we don't stand by that, we're not prepared to accept that, and because that is part of your core scriptures, because that is part of the underlying tenets of your faith, most moderate Muslims do not come into the public arena and condemn the fundamentalism. That silence is complicit, in my opinion. That's not to say that they are bad people, but in the face of what is wrong, yes, we cannot be silent. Doesn't matter which faith.
I agree with you, and I think I've got skin in the game, Bishop, because I'm an Irish Roman Catholic. My parents are Irish. I was born in the United Kingdom. I love this country, and I have familial connections with Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and the Roman Catholic Church. And I would be the first, Bishop, to call out the catastrophic institutional problem of paedophilia among Catholic priests. I'll say it out loud. There's no hiding. There's no smokescreen. It's not racist like the grooming gangs. Call it out. The Irish Roman Catholic priests were overrepresented when it came to paedophile offences over many decades. I said it. Not that difficult, is it? Similarly, IRA terrorism, Republican terrorism, which we all grew up with in the 70s and 80s and 90s. So I'm able to call it out. Moderate Muslims have got to do the same.
Mark, I completely agree with you. And I'm an Anglican, just like you. We've had problems with paedophilic priests in Anglicanism. It is morally repugnant. The church failed in its obligation to protect people.
Especially the Archbishop of Canterbury.
100%. And as we've seen, it cost Welby his job. That is not acceptable to me. And I condemn it in the strongest possible terms. I did an interview several weeks ago. What the interviewer said to me at the end of it, what do you say to priests that have been looking at young choir boys' bottoms and having perverse thoughts? And I said very openly, you better pray the police get you before I do.
Wow, well, it's a wonderful sentiment.
You know, we've got to see this. Moderate Muslims need to come out now and condemn what. And I credit to Saudi Arabia for their stance on radical Islamic fundamentalism, because they've made a very bold and public stance and warned the rest of the world, and the rest of the world isn't listening.
You're so right about that. And we've got the United Arab Emirates who won't send students to the UK for fear they'll be radicalised. You don't have public prayer in Muslim countries, and you have a total focus on dealing with Islamists across the Middle East, but not in Middle England. Briefly, Bishop, a couple of quick ones before we go. The Bible. So you mentioned the illiberal, violent and imperious nature of parts of the Quran. But what about the Bible, though? Some of that's pretty unsavoury as well, isn't it? Talking about regulating slavery rather than abolishing it. Particular stuff in regards to babies, child sacrifice, etc. So isn't the point about these ancient scriptures that they're not supposed to be taken literally? And is that therefore not a defence of Islam, that you don't take it word for word as fact?
Listen, there's three ways to interpret Scripture. There's the literal, there is the implied, and there is the revealed, given to us through the revelation of the Holy Spirit. The one thing I will say is this. Somewhere in the middle of the Bible, round about the 44th book, there's a big break, and there begins a section of the Bible called the New Testament, where we have the Gospels, where Jesus talks about living in peace with your neighbor, where Jesus reiterates the need to not commit murder and various other things, where he talks about let he that is without sin cast the first stone. Christ enters our hearts to bring peace, and that was the purpose of his entering the world. The annunciation of his birth. What do the angels proclaim? Peace on earth, goodwill to all men. It is to understand that in Christ we take on a new persona, the persona of grace, the persona of mercy, the persona of love, not a persona of violence, not subjugate the whole world and convert through death or whatever means, and how that's now interpreted in a modern translation. I don't see Christians going around the world slicing people in the neck because they're not believers. I don't see Christians going around the world blowing people up like we saw in the Manchester arena because women aren't dressed properly or music is against the scriptures. I mean, you look at the Islamic text, music is haram, it's offensive to God. Yet worship, including music, throughout the Christian and Judeo text is an active part of our worship. So you can't correlate the two. We don't proclaim violence as a methodology anymore. In fact, we proclaim that Christ's love is peace, and that is what we strive to as believers each and every day, in public worship, in private worship, and personal devotion.
Bishop, I have an audience made up of believers, non-believers, all faiths, all religions, all ethnicities. However, it is a Christian country. Would you consider finishing this conversation with a Christian blessing?
I most certainly would, and I would be honored that you asked me. So let me simply say this. The peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of his Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, and the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, be with you and those whom you love this day and always. Amen.
My thanks to Bishop Kai. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk Breakfast. It is 8:53, just 5 minutes away from Dolan's dispatch. Labour's Boris Wave U-turn. This is a shocker, folks. I've got the inside story. But first, horrible ratings and a 2-star review in the Daily Telegraph. Is it time to put comic relief out of its misery? Who better to ask than one of the finest comedians in the country? He's on tour at the moment, Leo Kearse. Good morning, Leo.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm very well. One of the problems with comic relief is it doesn't seem to involve any comics anymore. In recent years, we've had David Tennant, AJ Odudu, and last night, Davina McCall. When was the last time she did a late 20 at the Comedy Store?
Yeah, and also, I mean, the amount of money they're raising is slumping year on year from its peak around 2002. So you know they're obviously not appealing to as many people as they used to, and that's probably a good thing because I've been looking at where this money goes, and it is terrifying. I don't know if you know Charlotte Gill, but she picks through charities, picks through taxpayers' grants and all this sort of stuff. And she has found that millions of pounds of comic relief money have been going to charities that do things that British people probably don't want. They help migrants come into the UK illegally. They assist them when they're here. They give them legal aid. They give them all the assistance they might need to stay in the UK, even though they've entered illegally. And they even use fake models in their adverts and pretend that those models that are quite often, just stock images from Getty or whatever, are real refugees. Oh, this is a real gay man from Somalia. And that gay man doesn't exist.
No, it's an out-of-work actor that played a dead body in The Bill 10 years ago.
Yeah, I could be doing that role. I mean, I need the work right now. Why can't I play a Somalian guy?
Well, I don't see anything problematic about that whatsoever.
Yeah, we need diversity in our Somalian migrant representations, don't we? So, the odd Scottish guy in there would tick that box.
Well, I think so, also, and I think a bit of makeup to change your ethnicity. I mean, at a certain point, that's going to come back into fashion, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm transracial. Have you checked my pronouns? Have you seen the flag in my bio? I think you'll find that's an Eritrean flag.
Well, I've seen you naked, Leo, and I would say you're trans ready. That would be my view. I think you're good to go. But can I ask you, Leo, about these schemes? Because I think when the great, generous British people give money to comic relief, they think that it's going to go to hungry children in Africa, antibiotics to pregnant women who, risk death in childbirth, water towers, electricity supply, that's what people think they're investing in. And what they're doing, as you said, is propping up an illegal trade in human trafficking. And essentially, it's not charity, it's activism.
Yeah. It's absolutely. I mean, all of our institutions have been captured by the blob, have been captured by the far left, and they now work against our interests. So yeah, and even the charity that we do. I mean, I remember begging my mum to get the Live Aid single back in 1984, was it? And then, I'm sure we saved lives in Ethiopia, and I'm sure in a lot of cases that was a good thing. But then 40 years later, Hadush Gerber Selassie Kibatu comes across in a small boat and sexually assaults a child in Epping. And I feel personally responsible because I helped Bob Geldof feed that guy, you know?
Correct. I mean, this is the big problem, where this money goes. What do you make of the show itself? I mean, we do have some talented comedians in this country, you among them, Leo, and I'm going to be giving the details of your tour in just a moment. But do you rate the kind of stand-ups and sketch actors that are currently doing this show? Does any of it work?
No, the trouble is, I mean, the blob, this sort of leftist blobocracy controls everything, controls the institutions. Obviously, we've got Labour in power right now, but even when the Tories were in power, these lefties were still controlling everything, especially the media, especially the BBC and all of that sort of output. So then when you get comedians on TV, like the new Saturday Night Live that's coming out, you know, these comedians are supposed to be satirizing contemporary mores, satirizing the sort of orthodoxy of the day and whoever's in power, but they don't. They're completely aligned with whoever's in power.
They are regime comedians.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess you don't look to comic relief for that kind of satire, but it's still, you know, it's just this tired hack sort of the old guys. I mean, Lenny Henry, I know he stopped doing it a couple of years ago, but you know, he was doing it for like 40 years. I think it was time to get some new blood in. But the new blood isn't any different. And they're talking about getting Lenny Henry back, but he's somebody. I used to look up to Lenny Henry as an example of how you know, immigration you know, can be a great thing, and how, you know, he's absolutely British. But then he starts advocating for reparations for African countries, and I'm like, wait a minute. Would a British person, when I go and see my mates, you know, my mates who can trace their lineage back centuries, they're not advocating for reparations for the Caribbean or for Ghana because they're British. And it's like, if you want to be seen as British, you should leave your whatever ancestral demands you've got, whatever your. Man, you should be the person. If you want to be a good example for immigration, you should be the person who makes themselves completely aligned with British values.
Too right. Lenny Henry, a witless grifter. Leo Kearse is on tour. LeoKearse.com, funniest man in the country. Buy your tickets now. Dolan's Dispatch next. It might get me cancelled.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.903, Talk Breakfast. Happy Saturday, one and all. Mark Dolan with you on Talk Breakfast. So much to get through this hour. But I've got to tell you, I cannot go anywhere without meeting amazing Talk viewers and listeners. So a big shout out to Russell Owen, who I met on London Bridge the other day. What a gentleman he is. What a man of wise judgment. And on their way into my local Wetherspoons, John and Trina, who I hope filled their boots yesterday evening. We love Wetherspoons, don't we? Other pub brands are available. Well, welcome to the growing broadcast revolution that is Talk. It's great to have your company. A packed hour. Dolan's Dispatch on its way in just 1 minute's time. It might get me cancelled. Good. Also, breaking this morning, the special relationship in ruins as a furious Donald Trump blasts Keir Starmer for Britain's, and I quote, very late response in the Middle East, as the Prime Minister finally allows America to use British bases to strike Iran. Another day, another religious display from the British Muslim community as 30,000 worshippers participate in a mass outdoor prayer in Birmingham. So is public Muslim prayer un-British? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is my phone number. Sholopay is taking your calls this morning. She's doing a brilliant job. We've got a full switchboard. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And I've got a very important parish notice for you, because at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, Tom Bauer, the author of a devastating new book about Harry and Meghan, it's the interview they all wanted. We've got it on Talk Breakfast, 9:30 tomorrow. It's going to be a big one. So much to get through. As the saying goes, let's talk. You can hear the show live on DAB+, in-app and online. You can also watch the show, including Dolan's Dispatch. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Whilst you're getting your YouTube going, just jump on your computer, get your browser up, YouTube, search Talk, hit the live button, you watch the show. Whilst we're doing that, you will not believe this story. Just a moment before Dolan's Dispatch. A woke council is offering its staff therapy and safe spaces because Nigel Farage is visiting their city. What's going to happen to these people when he becomes Prime Minister? They're just going to have a meltdown. I think what they should do is emigrate somewhere else, and let's see how well that progressive left-wing society would be running themselves. Folks, so much to get through. It is 9:06, as always, at this time on Talk Breakfast. We're going to do Dolan's Dispatch. I always try to be fair and give credit where it's due. And I applauded the positive decision by this Labour Home Secretary, yes, this Labour Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to extend the time that indefinite leave to remain is granted from 5 years to 10 years. I applauded this Labour Home Secretary for an excellent decision. Not enough, of course not enough, but a step in the right direction to extend the time that people have to wait for indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10 years. It was a good policy. And it came with some excellent terms and conditions. Criteria by which citizenship is granted. Hoops that you have to jump through. For example, you need a decent income. And if you're earning a lot of money, you get citizenship more quickly. You have to have a good income, you have to speak English to an excellent standard, and you can't have a criminal record. Fantastic. A great policy. Well done, Labour. Except it's our understanding this morning on Talk Breakfast that they're going to scrap it. Another U-turn, the 19th U-turn by my calculations. No, 19. Now, typically, for Sir Keir Starmer, this decision to bottle it and to get rid of an important and good policy was not born out of a concern for the economy. Forget about that. This decision to open the floodgates to millions of migrants was not economic, not societal, certainly not in the national interest. It is pure politics. It comes from pressure from the ginger growler herself, Angela Rayner, who has designs on number 10, who has described this sensible Labour policy, this smart move to tighten the rules around immigration. She's called it un-British. Well, I'm sorry, Big Ange, but control of your borders is not un-British. It is the very definition of what this country is all about. Now, Starmer is also responding to pressure from the radically left-wing, open borders-loving Green Party, led by the breast-enhancing guru, Zach Polanski. But with an economy already in the red and a country living beyond its means, with up to 10 million people of working age not active in the economy and reliant on benefits, it is deeply irresponsible, it is insane, it is dangerous, it is wrong to settle 2.5 million more people on low or zero income who arrived in this country from 2021 as part of the Boris wave. That is 2.5 million people that will add, I'm afraid to say, to the country's debt burden. And it will pile further strain on our creaking infrastructure, housing, NHS, the roads, reservoirs, energy supply, education, and our borderline bankrupt welfare state. Folks, this is economic quicksand. It is a race to the bottom. Now, there's nothing wrong with these 2.5 million people who want to stay. You and I would do the same thing. We would seek a better life too. But unfortunately, these folk will either be unemployed or lower skilled workers. Therefore, even if they've got a job, they will be a net cost to the taxpayer for the rest of their lives, needing subsidised housing, needing in-work benefits, NHS services, school places, policing and much besides. Now, the full cost of this horrible indefinite leave to remain U-turn, this Boris wave immigration betrayal, which grants indefinite leave to remain without the proposed tightening, is going to cost, are you ready for this? Just take a moment to prepare yourself for this figure. This is the cost of the Boris wave. £234 billion. That, folks, by my calculations, and I'm no Carol Vorderman, right? I'm more Diane Abbott than Carol Vorderman. But £234 billion, folks, that is a cost to the taxpayer. That is the best part of £250 billion. Meanwhile, the left will tell you that mass immigration is good for the economy, except that will be minus $250 billion. This according to research from the Centre for Policy Studies. What it is, folks, it's a Ponzi scheme. That's what it is. It's a house of cards, an enormous hellish mortgage hanging over every single British taxpayer. And in fact, it's hanging over future British taxpayers that haven't even been born yet. And what about the integration of that many people from overseas? What do we know about that? Are they going to integrate? Will they speak the language? It doesn't matter anymore. Have they got a criminal record? How good is their English? What will their cultural, economic and spiritual contribution to the country be? It won't matter because Labour is going to stamp the card and let them stay. It's wrong. It's reckless. And it will be the single greatest crime of this Labour government. If Keir Starmer accepts the Boris wave, then you can wave goodbye to a coherent society. If he accepts the Boris wave, You can wave goodbye to available public services. If Keir Starmer accepts the Boris wave, you can wave goodbye to billions. 9:12, Talk Breakfast. Daniel is in Epsom. Good morning, Daniel.
Morning, how's it going, Mark?
It's very good, Daniel. This decision to scrap plans to lengthen the time that you have to wait to remain in the country from 10 years down to 5, that's obviously what they want to do now. Angela Rayner says that open borders are un-British. What do you think?
I think we're witnessing a genocide of native British people in our own country. I think native British people are being systematically replaced from unskilled invaders from the third world. I think over the past sort of 40 years, I've seen such a steep decline and degradation in Britain because of mass immigration from the third world. I think it's ruining our country. I think it's destroying the fabric of our society. I've even written to King Charles and Prince William, and I've urged them to get involved because this is serious now.
And Daniel, just, you know, you're right about, you know, society, our culture, what the fabric of the country. There's also the money, okay? And what we've got this figure, which of course the left have disputed and said it's all fake news and lies. You got this figure of $250 billion. That's one heck of a mortgage, isn't it?
It's outrageous. I mean, the worst thing about the whole immigration scandal and what's happening to native British people in their own country is that we were never asked. Every time we've been asked to vote on it, we voted against it. But there's some driving force out there shoving it down our throats decade after decade. What do we have to do? My dream is that the right, Rupert Lowe and your Nigel Farages and Ben Habib, they all get together for the greater good. They get together. They put the British majority first.
Do you think Kemi and the Tories are part of that or not, Daniel?
I don't, because the first thing that she should have done when she lost the election was half of her party that are Lib Dems in blue ties, the centrists and conservationists. She should have got rid of them because that's why she lost. That's why she lost. And because they were inactive, they didn't do anything. And the first thing she should have done was get rid of them, but she didn't. So now she can't be part. I mean, they're going to be obliterated in May. They're going to they are the opposition, but they're not going to exist. I just think mass immigration from the third world is ruining our country, but especially Islamic immigration from the third world. I would like to see mass deportations and like a British book of rules come out. And if you don't assimilate and you don't comply, we get rid of you. If you're not benefiting our country, if you've got 6 children, but you work in a minimum wage job and your wife doesn't work and you're in social housing and you're using the NHS and the education system, if it's not beneficial to have you here, why should we? I think most of the British public agree with me.
Well, I agree. I mean, the issue, what we've been told by the establishment, Daniel, is the care homes, the fruit pickers, the NHS, that you need these folk because our own people won't do the jobs. The problem you've got, Daniel, which you understand and my audience understand, but the establishment don't, is if someone comes here from a different culture, so there's a big integration question, they come here and if their salary annually is £18,000 a year to work in a care home, well, that is a person that will be dependent on in-work benefits and the welfare state for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, well, I think...
So even if they work, it's still a cost.
Yeah, well, it's more of a cost because if they have multiple children and the wife doesn't work, they're in a social house and they're using the NHS and other public services...
It's a net loss. It's a bad deal.
It is a bad deal, but when you get that bad deal tens of millions of times... you know, against the native British people's wishes.
Now, Daniel, I need to take issue with you, though, because you called these folk invaders. Now, is it not worth, you and I are good friends, we can be honest with each other, we can be straight with each other, and I'm going to lay it out for you, Daniel. The boat crossings, when old Suella Braverman called it an invasion, I was comfortable with that because I think you shouldn't be here, you've broken the law, choose your words. However, these are the people, the Boris wave, the establishment, the blob have encouraged to come. Is it fair to call them invaders given they're not breaking the law or doing anything illegal?
It's not fair to call them invaders, but they still need to know that the British majority don't want them here. It's a bit like illegal immigration. I want to basically make sure that they're destitute, homeless, we don't feed them, we give them nothing. They should know that we do not want them here.
What would you say to those who would take the view that, reference what you said about Muslims or generally people from overseas, that you're racist and a Islamophobe? What would you say to that, Daniel?
I don't care anymore. I think we're all past that point. It's no longer 2005. You can't just shout the R word and everyone runs away. It's too late.
Because it's also a lie. It's not true, is it?
Well,
I'm assuming you're not racist, Daniel.
I don't think so. I'm getting more prejudiced by the day, though. I'll tell you that, because when I drive around London and where I live now, I look out the window and I feel bitter, and I feel like I moved out of London on purpose because I didn't want to live there. I didn't want my kids to live there, and it's coming here now. And I think it's not just me, but the British majority have had enough. I think Islam in particular is incompatible with Western democracies. I think it's about time that we realise that. And I just think we need to get a government in that are going to put the British majority first. Even proud black British families and proud Indian families that have been here 2 and 3 generations, they've got eyes. They must think to themselves, they must agree with us as well. You know what I mean? They must be of the same opinion as us. They can see the decline as well.
Most definitely. And Daniel, I think it's about, if you're going to have some immigration, because isn't the point, Daniel, that no one previously objected to immigration before the establishment overplayed their hand and opened the borders? Wouldn't you say that in the 80s, when we had immigration of 20, 30, 40,000 people a year, that was okay? Engineers from Singapore, computer programmers from Japan, doctors and nurses from Africa, people with genuine skills and something to give back. That's different, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I came of age in 1997. I was just turning into an adult then. And I can remember the country before 1997, and there were black and Indian families here. I grew up on a council estate in SE21. So, but this whole kind of identity politics and this race issue wasn't around then. We got over the 80s, the Brixton riots, and in 1997 we were rubbing along quite nicely.
We were fine.
The country was pretty homogenous, much more than now. There was 25% less population than there is today. The roads were pretty clear. Bearing in mind, in 1997 as well, you can look this up. We owed zero public debt. There was zero. We were in the black.
Yeah.
Now we owe 3 trillion quid. So a lot's changed in those 26 years.
Well, that was right. The New Labour inherited an economic bounty from those evil Tories.
I know, but the young people don't remember it. And then Blair opened the floodgates on immigration, and the Tories continued with it. And now we're in the cesspit that we're in today, and my country looks a lot different than it did back then. And I think we need action. We need someone. I just want the right to align and really get some mass deportations in. I've had enough.
Daniel, thank you for your call. I wish you an excellent Saturday. Call me again soon. Always an interesting conversation. I've got a full switchboard. How are we going to squeeze the calls in? I don't even know. So much to get through. But what about this Labour Boris wave immigration betrayal? More on that next. 9:20 Talk Breakfast.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:25 Talk Breakfast, always a highlight of the week, is the company in the studio of the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, no less, Kate Ferguson. And Kate, this is just my personal opinion, but I thought that the decision by Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to double the length of time in which you are granted indefinite leave to remain was a sensible policy. It also came with terms and conditions such as your proficiency in the English language, the absence of a criminal record, and something resembling an income. But it looks like this proposed idea, which has been popular in some quarters, will not see the light of day.
Yeah, exactly. So what have we seen this week? It's Shabana Mahmood's immigration policy, which is the rarest of things in Labour at the moment, a policy that polls well with the actual public. But what have we seen this week? Well, Angela Rayner sort of declared war on it as part of her big comeback. And she says it's un-British. She's basically kind of poking the Labour hornet's nest, galvanising this backbench rebellion of Labour left-wingers who we know are angry at this policy and starting to mobilise against it. I think it just shows the disconnect between some people in Labour and the public, to be honest. This is a popular policy and it's based on a principle, which is you should contribute. So what you can expect from the country, the state that you move to, relates to what you put in. So people that learn the language, who are employed, who might volunteer in their communities, they get this right to remain and a path to citizenship quicker than others.
Which is what most countries do.
Yeah, which is like, and I just think this is part of the support for this policy. People, look, Britain is a welcoming country.
100%.
We've had immigration, waves of immigration over thousands of years. It's not about being anti-immigrant.
Correct.
It's about how many can you afford to be here and what are the conditions with that. And what Shabana Mahmood was doing, I thought quite interestingly, was coming up with a kind of framework whereby what you put in relates to what you get out, this contributory idea. But Angela Rayner's gone studs up on it, and that's going to be really hard for Shabana. We know a lot of left-wing Labour MPs are mobilising against it now.
And Starmer is fighting a war on two fronts because he's got Angela Rayner with her eye on the leadership, making left-wing noises. And there's the Green Party, which is a clear and present danger to Labour in May.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Keir Starmer's besieged, basically. The May local elections, we've talked about it before, they're going to be a bloodbath for Labour. What a lot of Labour MPs in cities, particularly places like London, who have those elections, will think is, oh, no, we need to tack to the left, we need to stop the bleed to the Greens. But, I mean, I think that they need to stop being so navel-gazing and worried about their political backyard. And they need to think, well, what are the basic principles that we want to enact in the government? What do we think will be popular overall in the country? And if they pick 3 or 4 of them and stick to them, I think that is how you get support, not by thinking we'll tack left, we'll tack right, and sort of looking all topsy-turvy depending on the day of the week.
And just staying on this indefinite leave to remain, you're looking at potentially around 2.6 million people who came during the Boris wave. I think that Boris was told at the time by the Home Office that there's a skills gap because lots of people left the country during the pandemic, and there was a concern about hyperinflation, and it was thought that if we welcome people to come and work in low-skilled jobs, that will bring inflation down, proving, by the way, that yes, mass immigration does lower wages. It's been denied by some people in the past. The issue we've got, we won't demonise those people. It's 2.5 million human beings who wish to live here and have a good life, no problem. But it comes with a bill, doesn't it? You know, a possible bill to my viewers and listeners and your readers at The Sun on Sunday of £250 billion. Because, you know, and this is what somehow the establishment are not being fully open about, is that, yes, OK, fine, if you want to fill the skills gap and you want numbers coming in, knock yourself out. But it will cost money because if it's a low-skilled worker, they'll be dependent on in-work benefits and the welfare state for the rest of their lives. So let's have this debate because it ain't free.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about how much you basically subsidise those people. So you're talking about being on social housing, potentially, or council housing, obviously strains on schools, NHS, but also that thing of if you are coming over into very low-skilled, low-paid work, if that's going to be topped up by the benefit system, that person effectively isn't paying their own way. So there is a cost with this, and that's what the Home Office is acutely aware of. They'll also say that there was an abuse during that time of the, I think it's the health and social care visa, which people kind of used to get over here and then quickly fell out of the jobs market. I think I was talking to a Labour politician this week, and I was saying, you know, what I don't understand with some of the Labour left-wing opposition to this is you would never kind of accept this from yourself or your own family. So if you were moving to another country, you would expect to work, you would expect to integrate, you would expect to probably have to pick up the language. I don't reckon any of these Labour MPs would move to another country, settle there and be happy to be reliant on benefits. And the overhaul of the system isn't about demonising these people, it's about what conditions you have for settlement and the idea that should be work and integration. And that is what not only tackles the cost, but helps to integrate communities and tackle this issue of the problem of social cohesion.
Most definitely, and I don't think too many of your readers or my viewers and listeners would object to doctors and nurses from Africa, engineers from Singapore and computer programmers from Japan. But it's like you said, it's all about what skills you bring. If I wish to emigrate to Australia or you, then the CV comes out. You probably need a printout of savings you've got. Clear criminal record. It's not rocket science, is it? Meanwhile, this has put a smile on my face. This is Leeds City Council, who are offering their staff therapy because Nigel Farage is making a visit to the city.
I'll just flick back to play. There's such a funny story in the paper today by Stephen Moyes, which is that and he's seen an email at Leeds City Council offering, yeah, as you say, therapy for their employees because Nigel Farage is in town. I think the guy talks about it then knowing it might like harm their feelings, the need to find a safe space to talk about these things. It's just crazy, really. Not only is it kind of bizarre, you know, Nigel Farage coming to town is like not that big a deal, but it just shows how captured these kind of civil servants become by a kind of overly, I guess you might use the word woke, but kind of agenda where they're just terrified of getting any complaints from their staff.
Yes, we've had Brexit derangement syndrome, haven't we? We've had Trump derangement syndrome. I've got a new one for you, which is FDS, which is not a furniture shop permanently selling stuff on sale. This is Farage derangement syndrome. And the truth is, you don't have to love Farage. You don't have to hate him. It's a politician. It's somebody that seeks high office. We can't be demonising anyone across the spectrum for their views.
It's so ridiculous. It's like hilarious how much Farage lives rent-free in these people's minds. Look, he's not even that controversial. He's leading the polls. He may well become our next Prime Minister. But even if you don't like Nigel, right, and Nigel will be the first to admit there's loads of people that he's not their particular cup of tea, you know, who cares? Get over it. You don't need counselling because someone's in town. It's just bizarre. I don't know if this guy's kind of trying to justify his wage or whatever, but it's bananas.
Well, listen, I know you're sitting on some very big stories for tomorrow's paper. What have you got to finish with?
So I think, look, the big story breaking this morning, as I sit here, is that it looks like Iran have fired missiles on Diego Garcia, our base. I mean, it's been in the news for
lots.
Part of
the Chagos Islands, of course.
Yeah, but it's been in the news for lots of reasons recently. But if they have fired on that base, that's two things. Shows their ballistic missiles can reach much further than we thought before. But also, you know, that's a British base. That is almost like a declaration of war on Britain. So that really could escalate our involvement in that war, I think.
Pulls Starmer into a conflict that hitherto he has resisted.
Yes.
I look forward to reading your coverage about it in the paper tomorrow. The brilliant political editor of The Sun on Sunday is Kate Ferguson. More to come. In fact, next up, your calls. Is public prayer un-British? Don't go anywhere. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. You are listening to Talk Breakfast, voice notes galore. And this, courtesy of my brilliant engineer, Luke, is Anton.
Islamic prayer is not a sign of dominance debate. What does Islam actually mean? It translates to submission. Submission to the will of God, their God, Allah. And if you think that 30,000 people rocking up in our parks and public spaces, all sort of chanting Allah Akbar, our God is the greatest, isn't an act of dominance, then you're just being willfully blind, as so many are with so much else, like the grooming gangs or the Iran war or whatever else.
Thank you for that, Anton. And how about Wayne?
Morning, Mark. This is Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham, mate. 30,000 bums in the air in Smallheath Park. It's no surprise to me as a Brummie. You only have to look at the graffiti on the wall round Smallheath. No whites allowed. This is a Muslim area. I can say this as fact because I live round there, mate. How about 30,000 Christians going with the Bibles and praying there? Would not be allowed, mate. Wouldn't be allowed. And also the King, Never mentions the Christian faith. Always talking about the Muslim faith. He even had a call to prayer at Windsor Castle. This is a fact. Diversity is our strength and all that cobblers. Come and live where I live, mate, and see if it's a strength. I guarantee you it's no strength for me. Keep up the good work, Mr. Dolan. Keep pointing things out. Top man. Have a good weekend.
Gina, thank you very much for that, Wayne. And one of the damning parts of your voice note there was you talked about a Muslim area. There should be no Muslim areas. This is the United Kingdom. There should be British areas, right? It's one country, not a Muslim area. That's not right. That's not integration. So much for multiculturalism. Ian's in Cambridge, which is in... Where is it's Cambridgeshire, isn't it? Ian, hello. Welcome to the show.
It is Cambridgeshire. Good morning. Good morning, Mark.
I would have thought it's a nice sunny morning in Cambridgeshire. Is it today?
It's a bit foggy, but the fog's lifting. The sun's coming out, which is a great thing. Great metaphor for life as well.
Oh, isn't it, though?
Let's put it straight as it is. Listen, I'm a Christian. I pray to God. I prayed this morning as I drove to the gym. I'm an alarm clock Brit who was involved in social care up to a few months ago, having worked in it for 15 years for a fairly low wage, so I know what that's like, and have worked among migrants of various degrees, of which I'm not going to go into at this present moment. Sure. But from a Christian perspective, I pray as I want. I can pray where I want. I don't have to be out in the open to display that. And in fact, that's a good thing, because sometimes it's better to have private prayer because you can get a lot of things off your chest. But I always get up with the view that I'm going to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with my God. I've been through one or two illnesses in the last few months, of which the spiritual end is just as important as the physical, which, I think that proves my faith to some degree, because if you can imagine, in 2 weeks' time, we celebrate Easter, which is the death of Christ and then the resurrection of him. You know, we're talking about a living, breathing God that works, and we are working for peace. And that's the interesting point. I don't always hear that with other faiths, and I'm not going to pick on one in particular, but I'm thinking to myself, listen, if there isn't an issue of peace running through some of these things, then really they are not heading in the right direction.
Ian, what a great call. You're so right about that. And I was raised an Irish Roman Catholic, and we were taught to respect all faiths, and it was in many of the scriptures and in the gospel as well. Ian, lovely call. Very sad news today, actually, and it's Jenny Murray, who's a legendary broadcaster, I think you'll agree, from Radio 4 Women's Hour, and I just think that she was a genius. I really do. I know the BBC can be a bit woke and all the rest of it, very unaccountable, but Jenny Murray was a born broadcaster with a commanding, silky voice, great journalist, great interrogator. And when you turned on the radio, she was Radio 4. I thought she was fantastic. And I think it's very sad that she's passed at the age of 75. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Laura Jane, what did you make? Oh, I think we need to just get the line back up to Laura Jane. She just dipped out at exactly the moment that we want to discuss Jenny Murray. What I will say, by the way, why wasn't Jenny Murray still on air when she reached the end of her career? She was cancelled by the BBC because she didn't have the right progressive views. We've got LJ back on the line. Laura Jane, I was very sad to see the passing of Jenny Murray because I thought she had a great voice and I thought she was a commanding broadcaster.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. But typical BBC, they're being a little bit hypocritical and making fuss. They did, I have it on good authority, they fired her for not being in with the trans community or wanting to. She really was very anti that. So as woke as she may have seemed, there was a line for her, and she drew it on that. And they did actually fire her, although they gave her the respect of being able to say that she was retired or she was retiring. And I just find the BBC so hypocritical sometimes, because there they are, which quite rightly they're singing her praises, and she was an amazing broadcaster. But I think she was incredibly sad towards the end of her life because, you know, she'd drawn the line in the sand, and it was, you know, the trans ideology, and that really did for her.
Well, Jenny Murray, so just briefly, Laura Jane, like I said, what a voice. What you turned her on, switch on the radio.
Yeah.
Jenny Murray was Radio 4 and an old school broadcaster. But the thing is, her great crime, LJ, based on what you're saying, her great crime was thinking that there are two sexes, which happens to be the view of the Supreme Court, that the word woman pertains to your biological sex. That's the law. And her career, in your view, of what you've heard, was ended because she has a view which is biological fact and legal facts.
Yeah, she drew.
And she hosted a show called Women's Hour because she knew what a woman was.
Yes, exactly. And so then she was, as I say, she drew the line in the sand and said, no, you know, I am totally against the trans ideology, and that's it. And unfortunately, that's what did for her.
And I doubt, Laura Jane, I doubt she was anti-trans. She probably just thought that women should have their own private spaces.
Well, no, I think she probably was. I think, you know, she was old school. She was a different generation. I'm 66, but she was definitely of that view that, that you know, woman was woman and man was man, and that's it. No, I do believe that that's why she was fired. But of course, the only, you know, decent thing they did was to make, you know, her give the opportunity to retire, and that was fair dues because she'd had such an amazing career. But it's fairly well known underground, shall we say.
Well, that breaks my heart. I think reading between the lines, it wouldn't be surprising. Laura Jane, lovely call. Have a great Saturday. We'll speak soon. Poor old Jenny Murray. Same thing happened to Steve Wright. Do you remember him? Radio 1, then Radio 2. He died of a broken heart because the BBC axed him, even though he had record ratings. What about Ken Bruce? Didn't tick any boxes, did he? Except he had the biggest radio show in Europe, and he leaves the BBC. Make it make sense. They've got a problem, haven't they? Dave's in London. He's got no problem. Dave, I've only got a few seconds. What would you like to say this morning, sir?
Yeah, hi, Mark. Very quickly, your comment around we don't mind immigrants if they're doctors and engineers and everything else. I do, and for two reasons. Number one, you're hollowing out other countries. So if they train up their engineers and doctors, then what? We nick them. And secondly, if we've got all these people going to university, paying all this money, why on earth can't we just generate our own skills? If we want doctors, get a university to do it. And if they won't do it, get another one to do it. If they won't do it, shut the bloody universities down. If we need engineers, get the university courses incentivised to do it. Because all we're doing is shoving kids through university with degrees that are no good, and then putting them on loads of debt and pretending that in some way they're going to be contributing to the exchequer because they're paying their loan back. You know, it's just bonkers. We've completely lost the plot on just about everything now, and I just put my head in my hands most days.
Well, I'm really glad that you slapped me on the wrist, David, because you're entitled to push back on what I've said, and you raise an incredibly good point. I said earlier that I would welcome engineers from Singapore, computer programmers from Japan, and doctors and nurses from Africa. But as Dave says, we've got universities, we've got schools, we've got colleges. Why can't we teach our own to do these things? Dave, thank you for that. Valuable call. Call me again soon, young man. I've got a full switchboard. I wish we had time for everyone else, but we've got so much more to come, so much to squeeze into the show. Don't forget, Tom Bauer. It's the interview they all wanted, his brand new book about Harry and Meghan. Tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. You won't want to miss it. More to come. Is public Muslim prayer un-British? This is Talk Breakfast.
is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast 9:49. As always on a Saturday, we do the Retro Rewind, choose a wonderful year in the past and have a bit of nostalgia in the company of Virgin Radio's star, the host of the Baby Breakfast, Steve Denyer. Hello, Steve.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, and I want to go back down memory lane. What's the year?
Well, the year is... Can I start by saying we've got a great episode of TFI Unplugged? Can I do a plug for TFI Unplugged?
Well, this is
number 7.
massive. So it's one of the biggest shows of the 90s and the 2000s on Channel 4.
Yes.
It's returned to Virgin Radio, and you can watch it on YouTube.
And the great thing is classic little moments. Like you'll see this week's episode, Bono back in, I think it was 97. We got Garbage back in the 90s. But from this week on the show, James Norton coming in talking about being Brian Epstein in the Beatles anthology movies, which are coming out soon.
Very handsome actor. Some people think he might be the next Bond.
Well, they asked him about that, and his response within TFI Unplugged is very interesting. And also, James Corden came in yesterday, and the first minute of that interview is the reason why we brought back TFI Unplugged. James Corden summed it up perfectly, because he's a huge fan of the show, and he was just visibly moved being around the TFI desk. And James Corden, a global star, really great to be part of that. So you'll see it all. It's on our YouTube page, Virgin Radio UK, and these episodes are great. It's like the 90s are back again, and you don't have to wait till 6 p.m. on a Friday. You can watch it whenever you want. So
and I hate to tell you, but not only is Evans a multi-talented man, a great innovator, a very nice chap as well.
He is. He is.
Yeah, you, on the other hand, a monster.
Oh, dear.
You're a diva.
Oh, dear.
By the way, I will tell you, I'm going to betray a little detail here. We might be having a beer after the show tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Because I'm always as sober as a judge for the show, because I have a duty to my viewers and listeners.
Of course you have.
But we're going for a beer with producer Dean.
Yes. I hear the Dolan credit card's already been supplied. Yes.
Now, I will tell you that Dean's... He's been back in the Priory for a week. We're going to undo all of that good work tomorrow.
In 2 hours.
Yeah, and then I'm going to report back to my viewers and listeners about exactly what happens.
Okay.
So behave yourself tomorrow, because I'll be doing a Dolan's dispatch.
All right.
About it.
Diet mineral water for me.
Well, listen, folks. Enough about me, and then let's get to 1984.
1994.
94.
We're doing 1994,
well,
which is, what is it, 32 years ago?
Me and my eyesight.
It was the year that Tony Blair won the Labour leadership battle. So we lost John Smith, and that was huge news, because he was the leader of the Labour Party.
I know.
And there was the contenders, Tony Blair, there was John Prescott, there was Margaret Beckett. So Tony Blair managed to win it, I think, by 57%. And it was really the startings of New Labour. Remember, Tony Blair didn't get into power until 97, but he had that 3 years of portraying, the new vision, the new Labour vision.
Which was quite good, because it gave them time to get ready for power, didn't it?
Indeed. Let's take a little look at the clip, how young he looked.
Today I set out my vision for our party and our country. What we are, where we stand, and how we will govern. we meet in a spirit of hope. Hope that change can come. Hope that we can rid our country of this Tory government, their broken promises, their failed policies, their discredited philosophy, and elect in their place a Labour government for Britain.
Well, he was a polished performer. He still is. You mentioned he's quite tall.
Very tall. Apparently as tall as Chris Evans, is 6'5", 6'4", 6'5".
Well, that is surprising.
You never pick that up, do you?
Well, can I shock you with the height of another Labour leader? Keir Starmer, 5'8".
Yeah, he's small. He's about my height. I've met him when he's been in here before.
There you go.
He just
Lucky
looks
you.
straight through you, though.
Is that right?
Like a machine. It was a very cold stare.
Bit scary.
Should we move on to Fred and Rose West?
Let's do it. Yeah.
This
Well,
was
they're
huge...
my favourite double act, actually. I bought all their albums in the 60s. Fred and Rose.
Stop it.
There was Fred and Rose at Christmas, Fred and Rose Easter special.
Yeah.
No, of course, two of the country's most notorious serial killers.
Thank you for bringing that
I
up.
might have misjudged the tone of that.
I think you did. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know whether to
Luckily,
smile or not.
I've got great news for you. This is not live, so we'll fix it.
Oh, OK, we'll edit that bit out. Should we see a little clip of what happened? This sent shockwaves through the nation.
The first day of drilling inside the house and another grim find for detectives. What they suspect as 2 further bodies under a concrete floor.
I have reason to believe that there may be other remains in the area, but I am not in this position at this time to explain that further.
The latest remains haven't yet been identified, but relatives of 2 missing people from Gloucestershire have been told about what the search team has unearthed. Specialist radar equipment has allowed police to look into walls and under the foundations, pinpointing objects hidden behind stone or bricks. The house owner, Frederick West, is accused of murdering the 3 women whose bodies were found in his back garden.
Horrific monsters, may they burn in hell.
There have been documentaries about this. I was a journalist back in this year, like a trainee journalist, and we studied this case, and we went to Gloucester, and, you know, journalists from all over the world, because we hadn't seen anything like this, I don't think, and especially documented. It was on TV. You saw the poor, you know, the remains of the poor, kind of the people who lost their lives in the garden, in the wars. There were documentaries about other places that Fred West up in Scotland may have killed other people as well. He died in prison. He killed himself, didn't he? Rose West went to prison the following year in 1995. But some great documentaries about this, and startling kind of to think of how they got away with it for so long. And they were poor people that are often down on their luck, that just went missing because nobody really noticed.
Truly wicked people. What's next?
We've got first ever national lottery. Do you remember buying the first ever ticket?
I do, actually.
The national lottery.
We all thought we were going to win.
We did, didn't we?
I was so nervous.
I won the first week.
You did?
I won a tenner.
Why are you still here?
And then I never
I
went.
see.
Yeah, you see. Apparently 7 people shared the first prize. The first prize was 6 million. Who hosted the very first national lottery?
It wasn't Eamon Holmes, was it?
Noel Edmonds.
Oh, wow.
And
Brilliant.
20 million of us tuned in. And it's made over 7,000 millionaires since 1994.
And it's been great for sport, hasn't it?
Yeah, they plough money into so much great, you know, charity stuff, sports stuff. Like when you think about the Olympics and, you know, just so many good things have been aided by us lot paying to take part in the lottery.
Turns out, yeah, credit to John Major, that was his policy.
We also had the Eurostar. Do you remember the Eurostar started in this year? Now, a ticket, I've looked into this, cost about £170 to go to Paris. The hilarious thing is it left from Waterloo as opposed to St Pancras, but it was really slow our end of the channel, so it kind of chugged along, stopping at every lamppost, and as soon as you go to the tunnel and through to Paris, it sped along. But of course now it takes 2 hours as opposed to 3.5 hours, and it was one of those big moments, where we were like, wow, we can really do this. Should we have a quick look at one of the big movies of the year? There's 2 big movies. I could have gone for 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which made a household name out of Hugh Grant. Wet, 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 Love Is All Around was the biggest single of the whole year. I think it was #1 for 14 weeks. But instead, no, I'm going for Pulp Fiction. Take a look at this.
Don't you hate that?
Hate what?
Uncomfortable silences.
John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Maria de Medeiros, Ving Rhames, Eric Stoltz, Rosanna Arquette, Christopher Walken, and Bruce Willis.
You looking at something, friend? You ain't my friend, Pluko.
Die, you mother! a new film directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Great acting, great script, great
Incredible
music.
stuff. John Travolta's character, his career was fading. So this was the big kind of big moment he needed to be brought back. Bruce Willis took a pay cut to be part of it. They didn't even want Samuel L. Jackson. He wasn't the first person. But it's gone down as one of those cult movies, isn't it? And if you watch it now, it's every bit as good as it was back in 1994. An incredible moment.
And that director, what's his face?
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, he's a genius, and he decided, I'm going to make 9 movies and then I'm going to stop.
Yeah, and he did that.
He's not an old man. He stopped at 9.
This was the first one I ever saw, and I thought, I've never seen anything like that.
Well, listen, Steve, cannot wait for next week's
Lovely
Retro
to see you.
Rewind.
Can't wait for tomorrow.
We'll have a cold Budweiser. I'm delighted to say that joining us, not just in the